And we're live. Welcome everybody to the Lock-in Livestream. It's Friday night. It is that time of the week where we grab a glass of our favorite Irish whiskey and we hang out with our friends and our fellow Irish whiskey aficionados, and we spend a couple of hours, no more than 8 hours at a time here, drinking a bit of whiskey, having the crack, and coming together, especially at times when we're all so far apart, and seems like we will continue to be far apart for some time. So the Lock-in Livestream is a chance for us to get together and raise a glass to our health, hopefully, and to toast each other and to tell some stories and, of course, have some sips of our favorite Irish whiskey. So we are going to have a great night tonight, all things Jameson. We're going to dive into every aspect of Jameson whiskey, its history, the various whiskies that are on the market at the moment from Jameson, and we'll be sipping on 3 different whiskies tonight. So we'll be starting with Jameson Original, as you know and love, and then we will move on to Jameson Caskmates. Stout edition is what we're drinking next, and then we will finish up with some Jameson Black Barrel. So welcome everybody. Let us know where you are, what's in your glass. Maybe something Jameson of the Jameson variety. If not, no problem. As long as it's brown and it comes from Ireland, we let you in and we let you stay. So hi, John Dempster from County Down. Mark Ashley in Florida, good to see you. Nick Valley, good to see you. Jeff in Indianapolis. Jeff's got, he's got some good pours tonight. He's going all in. Black Barrel cask strength, then 18-year-old reserve, and then some Jameson rarest vintage reserve. These are the big guns from Jeff tonight. He's not holding back, celebrating a night of Jameson. Maureen Linehan in the house and Martin Hilliard. Great stuff. Plenty of stories and plenty of sips on our way tonight. Joe Moore joining us from Dublin Airport. Robert Falvey, great to see you from Middleton. Chris Connor is starting with some Napo Castle. He's all out of Jameson. That's Dram Good is working tonight, but he's tuned in to say hello. Omar, be safe out there. Good to see you. Dave Stewart joining us from Los Angeles with Caskmates Stout. Great stuff. So we've got good showing of Jameson products tonight. Not surprised that everybody's got a Jameson on their shelf, or 4 or 6. MP up in Minnesota shared a picture earlier with probably the entire gift shop from the Middleton distillery of every Jameson I've ever seen in my life on a shelf. So great love and support for Jameson products. So we're going to have a great night tonight. In a minute or two, couple of minutes, I'm going to be bringing in our special guest, Lisa McGrath, who's going to be joining us and telling us some stories and hanging out and having the crack. And we're going to sit back. It'll be as if we're locked into the pub, because I know that in Ireland you can't get to the pubs, and wherever you are in the United States, you may not be able to get to a pub either. Tonight, we're locked into our pub. It'll be like Lisa and me sitting, as we've often done, in the corner of a pub, telling stories and having a few drinks together, and delighted that you'll all join us for that. So what else do you all have in your glasses? Eamon is trying some peat tonight. Dark silky whiskey from Donegal. Might even convert me. I have another peated whiskey, slightly peated whiskey that came in the post this week that I'll be opening up during the week, and I'll share more about next week. I'm still not converted to peated whiskey. I'm going to try. I'm going to keep at it, but I'm not there yet. Definitely not there yet. Oh, great to see all the Jameson being broken open tonight. Michael is in St. Louis, in Missouri, opening up some Bow Street, Jameson Bow Street for the occasion, which is fantastic. JJ's got some Jameson Bowes edition. That's a Caskmates edition, a rare one. Great stuff. What else have we got? Distillery exclusive 12-year-old from Tatsuya and a 12-year-old from Japan. Very, very nice. Great stuff. And Mark Ashley's got a Jameson Original in a nice Irish whiskey cocktail. Well, interestingly, I'm starting with an Irish whiskey cocktail of my own with a Jameson Black Barrel Old Fashioned. I thought I'd get the ball rolling. Oil the machinery before we get going. So I'm delighted that so many of you have Jameson products. Jameson Blender's Dog, Robert has in Ohio. Great stuff, love the Blender's Dog. And John's got a rarity there, the Jameson Gold Reserve, no longer made. That's like hen's teeth to find now, but great to see that you've got that. So all things Jameson tonight. I want you to get your questions for Lisa, for me. We will do our best to answer them. As I often say to my American audience, if we don't know the answer, we'll make it up because we've got accents in Ireland. But no, we won't make it up. We'll find the answers for you. But we've got lots of interesting facts and anecdotes and tales from Jameson. We've got 3 great Jamesons that we're going to sip on. Who knows? We might even crack into more Jamesons as the night goes on. And we'll have a good old time. So get your questions ready. Feel free to put them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer all of them. And just keep telling us what you're drinking, what your questions are. This is a chance to really find out about the product that you love so much in the United States, the best-selling Irish whiskey in the world. So thank you all for joining. All righty. So some great things in your glasses. I think it's time to bring in our special guest this evening. And here she is, Lisa McGrath. Welcome to the live stream.
How are you, Irish Whiskey Barry? What's the crack?
What's the crack indeed? Lisa, all the way from Waterford via Boston. That's or it. Boston via Waterford.
Yeah, whichever way you want to look at it. I'm here in virtual dimensions.
So Lisa stole everything from the Jameson gift shop there and set it up behind herself to create a fantastic display to wave the flag for Jameson tonight.
Oh, it turned the wrong way. I keep going the wrong way because I keep forgetting that it's mirrored. I've gone this way so many times. You have it here on display behind me.
The rules are, Lisa, that you can't leave the live stream, the lock-in tonight until everything in those bottles is empty. I'm sure I shared that rule with you beforehand. If not, I should have. It
wouldn't be like us to be finishing off a couple of bottles anyway, Barry, so not a bother on that.
So Lisa, I've known Lisa now for a couple of years. I got to meet Lisa and become friends with Lisa in Columbus, Ohio. And Lisa, tell us a little bit about what you're doing today and your path to the current job and kind of how you ended up involved with whiskey and particularly Jameson.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been working with Jameson for about 4 years now. I first started off when I was fresh out of college. I went to college in Ireland. So I'm from Waterford, which is down the sunny southeast, which isn't as sunny as we'd like it to be, but still coined the sunny southeast for whatever reason. And I went to college in WIT, Waterford Institute of Technology, where I studied economics and finance with French. So it was because of my French component that I got my job at Jameson and was sent to France for a year, which was an incredible experience. I was the brand ambassador in the northwest of the country. So I covered, I was based out of a place called Nantes, which if anyone's familiar with France, it's about 2 hours south of Paris. And I was there for a year and I covered Nantes and a few other places in the Brittany area. So I covered Rennes, Angers, Brest, Lorient, Quimper, and obviously Nantes being based out of there as well. And then my time in France concluded in, I believe it was August 2017. And that's when I first came over to the grand United States of America. And I have been living over here the last 3 years. So I moved to Columbus and I was based out of Columbus for 2 years. I covered 7 states. So I had obviously Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Oregon, Michigan, and Virginia. So I was going pillar to post, spreading the good word of the Irish whiskey way. And then I found myself in Boston. So I am still with Jameson, but I am now, instead of a national brand ambassador, my new title is an activation specialist. So I covered Jameson, obviously a brand very close to my heart, the reason I'm in America and have met your fine self and so many other people along my whiskey way. But I now cover other brands in our portfolio as well. So I have a couple of tequilas, I have a Scotch, I have Kahlua, and I have Malibu. So very exciting journey. But obviously the one that always pulls at my heartstrings and the one that always reminds me of home is Jameson. So here we are in Boston. I forgot to say where I am. I'm in Boston. So, yeah.
Well, it's great to have you, and we've had some good nights hanging out, drinking whiskey in Ohio and in Boston as well. We've had some good nights out, and Lisa would be doing tastings in Ohio and introducing so many Ohioans to, and as you mentioned, the other states as well, to the stories behind Irish whiskey, and Jameson, of course, in particular, and doing a great job getting bars to adopt the Irish whiskey portfolio from Irish distillers, doing a great job of getting more of those on the shelves. So tonight we're going to, well, it's a really informal chat. We're hanging out as if, like I said, we're sitting at the table in the pub. We're going to sip 3 different whiskies. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about what's in them, how they're made a little bit, tell the stories, and then we're going to share some facts and some interesting tidbits about Jameson, because it is a fascinating brand, and it is, to most Americans, it is what Irish whiskey means. When somebody asks for an Irish whiskey, they're typically asking for a Jameson. It's just synonymous with Irish whiskey. And so I know that in our Facebook group, there's more mentions of Jameson than any other whiskey, and that's understandable because it does tend to sell a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're known quite. I would say we're pretty well known in America. We're not a little Irish whiskey hidden in the back there. We tend to be out front and center, and it's been not just a privilege but an honor to work with and for such a prominent Irish whiskey company. As you said, the largest Irish whiskey company in the world, and it's especially during times like this when it's just unprecedented with everything going on, and it's the longest I've ever been away from home. It's nice to have that connection and that affiliation with Ireland when I actually can't make it back home myself at the moment. So even when I talking with an Irish accent over here, and the minute I mention Jameson, the stories I hear about people going to the distilleries or even going to Ireland and all the things that they've experienced and all the fun that they've had back home, it really just makes my heart fill with joy and makes me really, really proud to be from Ireland and to represent such a prominent and well-respected Irish whiskey like Jameson. It's been an incredible journey so far.
What's in your glass? What did you start drinking now before we came on? Because I know I filled up my glass with a cocktail, an old-fashioned cocktail. Did you put something in your glass already too?
So before we came on, truth be told, I did do a little shot just to settle the nerves a little bit. I did a shot of a whiskey that recently came out in America, not too long ago. So this Jameson cold brew. So I did a little shot of that, and for anyone unfamiliar with what that product is, it's our latest innovation from Jameson, and it just saw one of my own.
Amy.
Hi, Amy. So it is the latest innovation from Jameson, and it's basically whiskey mixed in with a cold brew reduction. So it's at a little bit of a lower proof. It's going to be your 60 proof rather than your 80 proof like the other whiskeys. So I chose the lower proof, so I wasn't going to be sloshed when it came on, but just enough to calm the nerves. And for anyone who hasn't tried it before, it's great in Irish coffees. It's great on its own. It has more of no added sugar, so it can't technically be called a liqueur. It's kind of like a whiskey-based, spirit-based kind of like spirit, I guess. But it is great. And it has a little bit of a nuttiness, a little bit of a coffee, and a little bit of a chocolate flavor as well. And it is made with Arabica coffee beans coming from Brazil. So anyone who hasn't tried it, have a little sip. But this is our regular just Jameson original, start with the basics.
So, and let's start off with that. Let's start chatting about that. So we're going to go through 3 whiskeys tonight. Many people are familiar with Jameson, especially the original Jameson in its new packaging, new bottle label, lovely dimpled label that came out probably about a year ago, maybe.
Yeah, I would say so. So I would say this is kind of like the flagship of our portfolio. Anyone who has had Jameson before and was just, I would say, even trying to get into the original, just starting into whiskey, I think Jameson Original is I'm going to top up my glass a little bit as well. It's a great introductory whiskey for anyone who's a little bit unfamiliar with the realm of the world of whiskey, and anyone who wants to become a little bit more familiar with Irish whiskies or whiskey in general. I think it's a really accessible brand for a couple of reasons. It's super smooth. It's not that harsh. It doesn't have kind of like a typical burn. What makes this product so special and some reasons why it's just so prominent in the world, I would say, is just because of the rich history and heritage that has gone into this product. So for anyone who's ever done the Distillery Tour or has ever even just looked at the bottle before, you'll see that it says 1780. So we've been around nearly as long as America. So that's a pretty interesting fact. It's steeped in history and heritage. And our founding father, John Jameson, we have to address the elephant in the room. He actually wasn't Irish, so he was a Scottish man. He came over to Ireland in 1780. John Jameson was not Irish, so Scottish.
Newsflash.
I know. So he came over to Ireland in 1780 with his wife, Margaret Haig, and their 16 children. With that, they decided that they were going to set up the distillery in Bow Street, which is in Dublin. And they founded the distillery 10 years later. So came over in 1770, founded the distillery in 1780, opened up the doors, and they started distilling their whiskey in there for a good amount of years. They were there until 1976 is when we were in Bow Street, and then we moved down to Middleton. So with this product, it is a triple distilled Irish whiskey, like a lot of Irish whiskies. So every time you distill a whiskey, you're going to do two things. You're going to make it pure in its alcohol content, and you're going to make it smoother. So that's why I always say that I think Jameson is a great introductory whiskey, just because it's so smooth, it's so easy to drink, doesn't have any of a harsh burn. I know that a few of the followers who are in tonight have said that they've been drinking some peated whiskies. You're not going to get that peatiness or that kind of overwhelming smokiness with Jameson, which I think is great. It's a blended Irish whiskey, so it's made up of a mixture of a pot still whiskey, which is synonymous, up until very recently, was synonymous with just Ireland, but we have seen the development of pot still, that Irish style of distilling whiskey, coming over a little bit into the American territory. But it's been around as kind of our quintessential style of making whiskey. So what pot still whiskey is, it's a combination of malted and unmalted barley that has been distilled through our copper pot stills. And then we mix that with our grain whiskey. So just to note on the pot still whiskey, all our barley we get within a 100-mile radius of the distillery. So it's all very super locally grown, very, organically sourced, all that kind of stuff. And then we get our other whiskey, our grain whiskey. The grain that we use in that is going to be corn. And for anyone who's familiar with the climate in Ireland, we do not have the climate to grow any corn over in Ireland. So we import our corn from a place in the south of France where I actually studied before, called Bayonne. So all our corn comes from the south of France, and we use that to make our grain whiskey. And then once we have those, we can't technically call it a whiskey until it's been matured. So once we have those spirits after distillation, we have a single pot still spirit and a single grain spirit. We leave those to mature in a combination of different types of barrels. So the first barrel is going to be an American style Kentucky bourbon barrel that we obviously get from over here in America. We ship them over to Ireland, and we've been using those since around the 1950s is when we first started using the American bourbon barrel. And that's going to be about a 200-litre size cask. And for anyone who drinks bourbons, it's going to give way to those kind of sweeter notes, a little bit of a vanilla, a toffee and a fudge characteristic. And then that's balanced out by a European Spanish oak cask, so from a sherry butt. And we get those, like I said, from the south of Spain in a place called Jerez. Sorry if anyone speaks Spanish, my Spanish accent is not great. But that's going to balance out those woodier and those more sweet notes with a kind of oakier and a little bit more of a fruitier characteristic. So your prunes, your dried fruits, your spices, all those kind of characteristics combined to give what we have here, our lovely bottle of Jameson Original.
I think it's every American's introduction to Irish whiskey, isn't it? Like Jameson. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's at 2:00 in the morning on the floor of the bar, and somebody hands you a shot and says, "Here's a good idea in a glass. Take this."
Oh, the amount of times we've done shots at, standing up on bars and all that at unacceptable hours in the morning. But I mean, I don't think Irish whiskey would be where it is today without Jameson. I think it's synonymous with that experience and that indoctrination into the world of Irish whiskey. And I think it's an incredible experience. And it's so communal as well. I think it really embodies what it means to be Irish by bringing people in, having a drink with them, sharing a dram, sharing a conversation, having the crack. And I think that's basically what Jameson is. We have a little tagline for it, we always say that it's a serious whiskey that doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think that sums it up really well.
The old tagline. But we never did, and you're well known and famous in many parts of the world for. You know what I'm going to ask for. You didn't do it.
I didn't. I didn't do a toast.
You didn't do a toast?
You
have to do a toast?
Okay.
All right, we'll have to reverse. Wind back.
Wind back. Okay, we're back in time about 10 minutes prior. So I need to think that is going to be PG and acceptable for the masses. So I think I'll
grab your glass.
I think I'll do the old tried and tested one that took me about 10 attempts one night when we were on a Whiskey Wednesday to actually get it right. But I've mastered it now. So I hold up a glass. This is kind of like an old one that I'd say a lot of people know, but it's a good one, oldie but goodie. So may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be at your back. And may you be half an hour in heaven before the devil knows that you're dead. Sláinte. Cheers.
Sláinte. Lovely. Lisa has far more unsuitable and unsavory toasts that she'll do while standing on the counter of a bar while encouraging the locals to engage in the lovely Irish whiskey.
And they eat it up for breakfast, I'll tell you.
They do eat it up. So we've tasted many great whiskies on the live stream over the last 4 months. We've never actually tasted Jameson, believe it or not. And it is I know in deep whiskey circles where people are well advanced in their whiskey consumption, Jameson might have been a stepping stone on their way to other whiskies, but it is such a great staple to have in the cupboard all the time. And for some reason, we've overlooked it. And so that's why I was interested to bring it here tonight. Many of the whiskies we've tried before have age statements. Like here, I've got a bottle of Redbreast. It's got 12 years old on it. There's no age statement on a Jameson, is there?
There isn't. So up until very recently, we had a couple of age statements in our portfolios. So anyone who has any affinity towards Jameson will know that we had the 12-year-old, which unfortunately we don't have anymore, and we just have focused on the 18-year-olds. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The reason being is that I've even had conversations with our masters, our blenders, our master distillers in relation to this, Master Cooper. And the main reason is that with an age statement, it kind of ties you into the fact that it has to be a minimum of that amount of age in the whiskey. So what I mean by that is when you have an age statement on a bottle, it represents the youngest age of the whiskey that's gone into that bottle. And having spoken to these masters and people who have dedicated their lives to the production of whiskey, they've told me that sometimes it will come about that a whiskey has actually gained all the tannins, all the flavors, all the characteristic, everything that they could gain from the wood, it has gained it before needing to reach that minimum age. But if you put an age statement on a bottle, you are legally tied to having to leave the whiskey for a minimum of that amount of years in the cask, even if the masters feel that it's already achieved the desirable characteristic and the flavors and texture and everything else like that from the wood. So that's one of the big reasons why we've kind of deferred a little bit away from age statements. Another very obvious reason is that with the growth of demand, it takes a lot of time and a lot of care to be able to have those barrels maturing for a certain amount of time in the warehouse. And we were having a little joke about the warehouses earlier, Barry, but I think it's a good little segue into talking about what our warehouses hold. So over in our Middleton distillery, which is in County Cork, for anyone who's ever had the pleasure of visiting, it's about an hour and a half drive from where I actually grew up. So I took myself and the family over to visit it when I was back home at Christmas most recently, and we had a great time. So anyone who hasn't been, I would implore you to go because it is a very immersive and very engaging and just a very enjoyable experience. But in that distillery, we have on any given day 1.75 million barrels maturing. It's a lot of barrels. Yep.
Is that million with an M?
That's a million with an M, not billion yet, but maybe one day, who knows. But 1.75 million barrels. I don't know about you, Barry, but that's a little bit more than what I have in my back garden, what I have room for in there. You might have a little bit more, but who knows? But 1.75 million barrels. So with that, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of upkeep and care to look after all those barrels. So we have 79 different warehouses in our Middleton location. And then we opened up a brand new new warehouse location in our Dungorney destination. And it's with 54 warehouses. And in each warehouse, we have 16,800 barrels, which is a lot. So for that, it's crazy. It's just unfathomable. So with that amount of barrels, if we're subjected to keeping this liquid in a barrel for X amount of years, it kind of restricts the fluidity in which we can rotate through these barrels. And like we said, we have so many barrels maturing on any given day that it's very important to us that we are maximizing and utilizing all the space that we have. Yeah, 1.75 million. Crazy.
It's unreal. And I think as far as I remember from last time I saw the statistics, something like 300,000 or 400,000 of those are not yet mature. 1.4 million or something are mature, but they're all on the way to maturing. That's an incredible amount. JJ has made the comment, that's quite the Angel Shear. Lisa, what is Angel Shear and how does it apply to Middleton?
So Angel Shear, I'm so happy someone brought this up. So Angel Shear is basically what the percentage of evaporation is just naturally lost in the atmosphere from each barrel. So if you think about a barrel, it's very porous and it's almost like a breathing entity. It expands and contracts and expands and contracts. And this is great because with this process, it's how it releases all its tannins and characteristics and flavors into the whiskey. So like we spoke earlier, the fact that we use a myriad of different kinds of barrels at Middleton, but the ones we use predominantly with Jameson are going to be your ex-bourbon barrel and your ex-sherry barrel. And with that expansion and contraction, it releases those flavors into the whiskey. But with that as well, it also has a natural phenomenon that occurs, and that's called the Angel Shear. And it's the amount of the barrel that just naturally evaporates each year from the barrel sitting in the warehouse. So it represents about maybe 1 to 2% per day. And what that represents to us in bottle terms is 31,000 bottles a day is just naturally lost to this phenomenon that we can't do anything about. It just evaporates off, and it's called the Angel's Share because it's as if it evaporates and rises into the heavens and the angels get to drink their little share on our distillery. It's not a little share by any means, actually. 31,000 bottles is quite the significant amount. It's almost as many bottles as you have in your own house, actually, Barry.
It's almost what I have here behind me. What is that rate a year? It's what, 2 to 3% a year. Is that what it is?
Yes.
In evaporation?
Yeah. So it breaks down to, it's between 1 to 3% each year, and each day it's 31,000 bottles just gone.
31,000 of these lost every day.
Every day. Yeah, just see you later. So if anyone can come up with a way to combat the Angel Shear, you'll be a very rich person because you'll be saving every distillery in the world a lot of money.
Like, I know it's a huge issue, like this loss in terms of, I know the bean counters and the distillery would love to find a way to reduce the amount of loss, but isn't it? Yeah. We wouldn't have whiskey without it though, would we? Because otherwise, if it doesn't go in and out of the barrel,
exactly.
Whiskey like.
It's almost like the whiskey barrel itself is breathing, and it's almost like it's breathing life into the liquid in the barrel. And without that phenomenon occurring, I don't think whiskey would be the same. So it's obviously, because it's a natural phenomenon that we can't do anything about, it's going to keep happening until someone comes up with a solution. But I always hope no one really does come up with a solution, because I think it would just change the way of whiskey and the production of whiskey as we know it. And I don't know what the outcome would be. I'm very happy with the outcome now, so I don't think.
Oh, sure. Listen, if it's not broken, we shouldn't be fixing it. Like,
I agree, especially when it comes to Irish whiskey.
Whenever I've been in a tasting where there's been an engineer in the room, and I'll share this fact, and the engineer will whip out a bit of paper and say, "I have a solution." And he starts drawing some kind of convection device that he'll stick over the roof of the warehouse. But the solution I always share with people is, you don't want to change the evaporation. What you want to do is get closer to it. So sell your house in America and buy a house in Middleton, and then every morning come out the door and just go breathe in.
Yeah.
And you get a contact high from all the Angel Shear, and you won't have to buy a bottle of whiskey for the rest of your life.
Which is so funny because when you think of going into the distillery, and I'm sure you've done it many a time yourself, but you go in and you're not even allowed to have your phone on you just because of the level of ethanol in the, or a lighter, or anything like that, because the level of ethanol in the distillery and in the warehouses is just, it's so heavily saturated with ethanol that if you go in with a lighter or your phone, you could burn the whole place down. So they make you leave all those components and all those devices behind because you don't want to set the place on fire.
I had a woman got very worried. I was doing a tasting one time. A woman got very worried that when I told her how many barrels were aging at any one time, and she went pale, and she asked, well, what if there's a fire? And I assured her that there were many warehouses and there was a fire department on site, and we'd be covered. And it took a while for her to calm down after it, but it's a big risk.
It is. I'm glad she was concerned, though, have to look after the whiskey.
Julia says, I just want to clarify that evaporation rate is per year, not per day. So it's between 1% and 3% a year. Peter asks,
to rewind,
the evaporation.
Yeah, the 31,000 bottles is per day. We lose 31,000 bottles. Yeah. Day.
But the 1 to
3% is per year. But when you break that down on a daily basis, it's 31,000 bottles a day. Remember, we have 1.7 million casks. So yeah, 31,000 bottles a day.
And there's still expansion plans afoot, I know, for the demand that's growing. So there's going to be even more barrels hopefully maturing there in the future.
Fingers crossed.
Peter asks, are the barrels all first filled during maturation? Well, it's a mixture, isn't it?
So for original, they actually are. So what we use for Jameson Original is going to be a first fill bourbon barrel and a first fill sherry barrel. But if you look at some of the other marks in the portfolio, for example, like the Cooper's Crows or something like that, we have 4 different whiskies that go into 5 different barrels. And with that, you have things like a second fill bourbon barrel, you have a virgin American white oak, you have a virgin European oak. So it definitely depends on the whiskey that we're trying to create. And each barrel, like I said before, is going to give a different kind of a characteristic. So the reason that we use, the way I always describe it is, if you think of barrels as if you're making a cup of tea. So you get your tea bag, and the first time you use it and you put it in the hot water, it's going to make a really strong, really intense, really good cup of tea. And it's the same way with when you use a barrel for the first time. The first time you put liquid into it, it's going to be very oaky, it's going to be very wood flavored and very heavy on whatever kind of a wood you're using. And then as you use it again and again and again, you're going to have some elements of whatever was in it before. So it's the same way with reusing a tea bag. The more you use it, it becomes a little bit more mellow and a little bit diluted, but still imparts flavors from the tea bag, the original tea bag. Same way with the barrel. As you put more liquid into it, it's going to pick up different flavors of whatever was put into the barrel before it, but it's going to become a little bit more dilute over time. And for that reason, we have a three strikes and you're out law at Middleton. So we use our barrels up to 3 times, and then we will actually get rid of them and we sell them on to other distilleries. So for example, a lot of the time rum distilleries will pick up our whiskey barrels because they like that kind of diluted, more mellow flavor that can be achieved from using an old whiskey barrel.
I remember Ger Buckley, the master cooper, sharing one time. I was at an event, and he's a great storyteller, and he loves the crack and talking all things wood and different barrel types. And he talked about how the lifespan that the wood, a barrel is a beautifully renewable resource, because the wood is a renewable resource, because typically we're using predominantly American oak, so that has come from Bourbon or Kentucky. And he talked about how the lifespan of a barrel was about 80 years in total. And between it being used in the United States, it being used in Ireland or Scotland or wherever, and then being sent back over to the Caribbean, perhaps to rum distilleries, he said it ends up being used for about 80 years. And he said 80 years happens to be about the amount of time it takes for a new oak tree to reach the maturity of it being cut down, which is remarkable. Oh,
it's a beautiful kind of like life cycle of the wood. It's incredible. Very, very, and Jerry's great. He's so passionate, and he's just been in the industry for so long, and he has some great stories as well. I'm sure if you've ever had a little chat with him or a couple of drams of whiskey after hours in a bar, he has some great stories to impart. But the life cycle of the barrel is just so impressive, and what it undergoes and how much it's transported from pillar to post and the different characteristics that you get from it. And the other thing that I forgot to mention as well, with the warehouse, with the 1.75 million casks, every single one of those is hand picked and inspected when it gets to the distillery. So every time that we order in new barrels, each one of them undergoes very strict inspection regulations from our master coopers and the cooperage team in Middleton, which is crazy. The fact that each of them are just hand inspected every single time they come in. It's
unreal.
I have a lot of work, and they're all hand assembled as well. So when we get our barrels over from America, they come as if the plies of wood are all breaking down into just individual stacks, and they have to be rebuilt again. Every single one of those one of those barrels rather is hand made once it's imported back into Middleton again, which is incredible. There's none of this production or any of that kind of technology is taken over. It's all hand done, which is very impressive.
I love the production of whiskey is this beautiful marriage of science and art. It's there are things we know about distillation and chemical production, and chemical engineering and what goes into distillation, and then when it gets handed off to the blenders and the maturation specialists, there's this beautiful, immeasurable art where nothing can substitute for the nose going into the barrel, and that little taste that just says, today, take it out, stop the maturation.
And especially when you talk to the masters, and Ger in particular, the fact that he's a 5th generation master cooper and he still uses the same tools that his grandfather was using. It's just such a lineage of heritage and passion for Irish whiskey. And I really think that that's what defines Irish whiskey as a category, just the level of history and heritage and passion that has gone into producing every single bottle, be it Jameson, be it other Irish whiskies. There's just,
that's right.
I don't think there's anything comparable to it in the world of whiskey outside of Ireland. And I think it's very impressive and very emotional for me to even think of, because it's just like, how far back it's gone.
Oh, sure, I know.
Such a rich history of fellow Irish men and women who've gone into making it what it is today, and very proud.
I know. Did you make me cry now? We'll be crying together.
Emotional.
No, it's very special. Like it's, I've heard people look at whiskey production sometimes like it's a factory operation, and there's a certain aspect of it that has to be like a factory in the sense of there's almost like a production line and there's very strict deadlines. But you've spent time with the people of Middleton and the people of the Jameson Distillery, and I've spent a little bit of time too. And when you meet them and you spend time with them, you realize these are artisans who have spent in many cases their entire adult lives working in whiskey. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, and sure, you even have people like Barry Crockett born on the grounds of the distillery. You know what I mean? It's in their blood. Like,
it's incredible. Crazy. Andrew asked how many locations are the barrels stored. So we mentioned how there's 79 warehouses on the Middleton distillery grounds, and then there's another 54 warehouses in Dungorney, which is not too far away from the distillery. And each warehouse has 16,800 barrels, which is incredible.
Yeah, and another note, something that kind of differentiates them from the way that they're stacked as well. So they're all palletized in Ireland. So when you walk in, they're just hundreds and thousands of rows of barrels that are stacked on top of each other on pallets. And that differentiates them from, say, over in the USA, where we are obviously, or over in Scotland. They tend to stack their barrels a little bit differently, but palletization helps us to maximize the amount of storage in each warehouse as well. And it also just helps with keeping them upright and side by side, aids the Angel Shear and all that kind of crack as well.
The barrels don't get rolled or moved around to do anything, do they? They just stay there for their entire maturation period?
Yeah. There's no like turning or any rotation like that. They just kind of stay where they are.
Caroline asks a question that I myself have asked the master blender Billy Lighton. Does he have a designated driver? And what he shared was that he said that he doesn't taste.
When he was over here, he did it anyway. We were catering him from pillar to post. So back in Ireland, I think it's himself.
Well, Billy actually lives in Northern Ireland and commutes all the way down to Middleton in County Cork, which is the length of Ireland. And he couldn't be doing a drive like that if he was drinking whiskey. And so he has shared himself how he noses the whiskey and has refined his senses over the 40 plus years he's been working for Irish distillers. He noses the whiskey to determine when it's right and when it's ready. So maybe the most insured nose in Ireland.
I would say so. I would, yeah, definitely.
We mentioned earlier that there are other pot still producers now around the world. And in fact, we have one of them who's joining us here tonight. And that's Patrick Miller from Talnua Distillery in Colorado. And he asks a question, will Jameson be releasing their own single pot still? And my understanding is that pot still is not a style that is representative of the Jameson brand, but certainly is representative of Powers, Spot range, Redbreast, etc.
So as it stands, and because for anyone who's unfamiliar with the Middleton distillery, so at Middleton, we're obviously producing Jameson, but we are responsible for those other brands that Barry just mentioned as well. So out of Middleton, we have Jameson, we have the Redbreast, lovely bottle there. Redbreast 21 is actually my favorite Irish whiskey. I think it's gorgeous. If you've never had a draft before, make sure you try and get it in the next couple of weeks.
Lisa's buying.
I put it on my tab, not a bother. But so we have Jameson, we have Middleton, obviously, incredible whiskey, so renowned and so just respected the world over. You have Redbreast that we briefly touched on as well. Then you have the Spots. We have obviously Green Spot and Yellow Spot, and happy to have just released Red Spot again last year. And then coming into the realms of Powers. So to answer your question, as it stands, Jameson has kind of developed itself as a blended Irish whiskey between the pot still and the grain whiskies. There aren't any plans as of yet to develop just a single pot still Irish whiskey, because we do have those other brands within the portfolio and even just out of the Middleton distillery that kind of pick up the slack from that end. But definitely something I'm sure we're considering, and something that has been addressed before and suggested. But as it stands, we're pretty happy with the little grain that's gone in there as well. It kind of balances it out for us and makes it that little bit like sweeter and more accessible for people as well.
It's 20 years since there's been a Jameson still. The last one that was released was the 15-year-old Jameson 15-year-old for the millennium. And that was it is regarded by many as one of the finest pot stills that have ever come out of Ireland. And probably was recognized for its standards and its quality at the time. And I know that from speaking to some of the folks in Middleton, there was trouble selling it 20 years ago. Today, it commands 20 times its original selling price to try and get hold of it, such as the quality of it. But people like the pot still.
Yeah.
Tatsuya says, yeah, Jameson 15-year-old pot still was wonderful. He fell in love with Irish whiskey with it, as many did. For those of you who've been lucky enough to taste it, it's out of this world, absolutely out of this world. There's another question here regarding the different tours that you can do. So the good news is that the Middleton distillery, actually, let's go back a bit, because we have tons of facts, and you and I can sit here for 10 hours, and we've done this before, and get absolutely hammered drinking whiskey, having the crack. But you'd never think we prepared a program for tonight, like with facts.
I know. So yes, thank you for bringing us back to the distillery. So as of Monday of last week, so the 13th, actually 4 days ago, we actually now offer a virtual experience of taking a tour of our Bow Street distillery. So our Bow Street distillery is the original distillery where Jameson set up shop in 1780. And you can now go online, and I don't know if you have a link available, Barry, but if not, we can probably put it somewhere in the comments later on. You can click on the link and you can go in and explore the history and the heritage and the production process and all about Jameson. And I had a look at it earlier on in the week. It's very informative, and it's actually includes some of the old videos that I used to use in my trainings. So it's very informative, and it's a great jumping off starting point to just explore the world of Jameson, especially with travel being restricted at the moment. It makes it like you're in the distillery without actually being able to physically visit the distillery. So all you need to do, for anyone interested, go on to jamesonirishwhiskey.com, have a little search on the website there, click on it. It's a 360-degree tour of our Bow Street distillery. And you, like I said, you can have a look at the history, the heritage, the production, all the facts and figures that come with Jameson Irish whiskey. And it's a really, really good experience.
So for those folks who don't know, there are two destinations in Ireland that represent Jameson, and that can be confusing sometimes. So there is. So let's go all the way back to Mr. John Jameson himself.
Yes.
The man who landed over here in 1770 and then opened the distillery in 1780. He was the man who started the distillery in Bow Street, or it's a little bit cloudy back then. The records aren't immediately clear if there was a distillery there before or whether he took over one or he started. In any case, he was the first to put the name Jameson on a bottle there. And he was one of many John Jamesons, wasn't he? There was more than one John Jameson. So he was the first one.
He was the first one. So he came over from Scotland in 1770 with Margaret Haig, the wife. And Margaret Haig actually descended from the Scotch distilling family, the Haig distilling family. And that's kind of where John Jameson came up with the idea that he wanted to get involved with distilling as well. But rather than be in direct competition with the in-laws, he decided he was going to uproot the whole family and start up his own distillery over in Ireland. So landed on the shores of Ireland in 1770, set up shop in 1780 in Bow Street, and was producing whiskey there up until 1976. So John Jameson himself, he had a son called John Jameson who took over the distillery in 1805. And there were actually 4 different John Jamesons who at one point or another headed up the distillery. So obviously nepotism wasn't a problem back then, not in Bow Street anyway. And they did a great job carrying on the name of John Jameson. Still find it on every single bottle of Jameson. And what happened was we lost the founding father in 1823, but kind of like it was a weird coincidence. 2 years later, the Middleton distillery opened up in County Cork. So in 1825, Middleton opened up their doors in Cork. Now, we didn't move production from Jameson in Bow Street down to the Cork Middleton distillery until 1976. And what brought that about was the merge of 3 large Irish whiskey producers. So you obviously had ourselves, John Jameson and Sons, you had James Power and Sons, and then you had the Cork Distilling Company. And they all came together to form what's known commonly today as IDL. So IDL stands for Irish Distillers Limited. And they joined their forces and decided to pool their resources into one distillery. And that's how we came to be down in County Cork. So when you go to Ireland, you can have a look at both distilleries. Both of them are still up and running. One of them is kind of more for the tourism and the history and the heritage element. That's going to be our Bow Street location. And then where we make the majority of our whiskey from grain to glass is going to be down in our Middleton location in County Cork.
And when you say the majority, all, so the Dublin distillery, there's no production. It's not a distillery anymore. It's decommissioned.
Yes, but there is one particular product that does do a little bit of its maturation in the Bow Street facility. And that's going to be our Bow Street 18-year-old. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's I know that we get lots of questions about that in the group. People aren't clear. And I know it can be confusing because of labeling issues in Ireland. Sometimes a bottle might say Jameson Bow Street Distillery. There isn't a distillery. There was, but today all production is in County Cork. And then you can experience what it was like in Bow Street. And it's a fantastic tour. It is, in fact, officially the world's most visited whiskey destination.
That is true. So of 2018, we actually were awarded the World Leading Distillery Tour. And in our first year of opening up to the public since renovation, so we closed for a little bit, and then we actually had a €12 million renovation period that lasted for a couple of months. And we reopened our doors again. I believe it was around St. Patrick's Day, 2000 and where was I? I was in France. So 2017, we reopened our doors. And then 2018, we were awarded the world leading distillery tour after seeing 350,000 visitors in our first year. So pretty impressive.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was, you know, very, very, very happy with that. And it was.
Were you happy with that? You were happy enough with that?
I put it down to the amount that I told people about the distillery and sent them on their way over to check it out.
Fair play. Listen, as long as the tourists are making you happy.
Trying.
So listen, we have tons of questions coming in. We'll try to get as many as we can, but I know that it won't be long us getting through the 8 or 9 hours that we've set aside for tonight. So I want to make sure that we move on to whiskey number 2. What are we going to drink?
We're going to do a little bit of the Caskmates. So for anyone unfamiliar with this product, it is a great product. The idea for it came around in 2013 and it hit the shelves in 2016. And basically it was a collaboration between our Master of Science, a great man called Dave Quinn. And he actually has a brother in Philadelphia who has a bar over there that you can go and visit. And I've visited a couple of times now. And he's gone over and done some tastings himself and some training. The name of the bar itself escapes me. So if we have any Philly listeners who have been there before
What's it called?
I can't remember the name of the bar, but it's Dave's brother has set it up and established it, but I just can't remember the name of the bar. I can have a look in my notes and get back to you on that one and maybe drop it in the group. Yeah, no, he's been over, and it was even with the production of Caskmates, he went over and did some, when they were introducing it to the American market, he did some really interesting tastings and trainings, very in-depth and very kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? They were very personable. They were, you know, it was kind of like intimate trainings.
Yes. Yes.
And it was a great experience. And yeah, so Dave Quinn, Master of Science, who is responsible for this product, I love telling the story between how Caskmates came to be. So it was basically Master of Science Dave Quinn is at his local bar, just chilling out, having a couple of drinks as you do. And his buddy from a local brewery ended up coming in. They were sitting down, just having a few drinks, you know, shooting the shit like you do after a couple of hours of being at the distillery all day and you just want to blow off some steam. They started thinking, and as they were talking and drinking, you know, ideas were just being thrown around as they do once you have one or two or maybe a couple more Jamesons. And by maybe Jameson number 5 or 6, they were like, do you know what? We're going to come up with a great idea now, plans to take over the world. And the idea that they decided to come up with was a swapping of barrels. So they were like, I'm going to give you some barrels. I'm going to give you some barrels as well. And we'll see what we can put into them and see what we can figure out and come to or whatever. So the next day they woke up and they were like, geez, I have a wicked headache. Too many Jamesons the night before or whatever. But the idea, one of them that they had decided to come up with to take over the world, stuck. And they were like, that idea of swapping barrels, let's see what we can do with that. So at Jameson, we decided to give them some empty barrels that previously had this lovely liquid in it, so Jameson Original. We gave them empty barrels that had Jameson Original in them, gave them down to the brewery, and they decided to put their own stout beer in them. So the Jameson Original had already been in the barrels for between 4 to 7 years, had been matured and bottled and everything else. And the brewery took in the barrels and decided to put in their own stout beer into the whiskey barrels. And like we said before, the barrels are very porous, so anything that you put into it, it just absorbs that flavor and that characteristic. We let it sit for about maybe 3 months, and it absorbed all that beer flavor. And after we emptied out the beer, we then brought back the barrels to Jameson, and we put regular Jameson back into the beer-soaked barrels, let it sit, and made a Jameson that's infused with beer. And that's basically what this product is. So Jameson Caskmates, it's basically like Jameson with a beer in a bottle. So it's going to have more of a stout characteristic. It's still going to be your 80 proof. A lot of the time people ask me during my trainings or my tastings, you know, because we added in a beer, is it going to increase the ABV, the alcohol by volume, or the proof? And no, the answer is it's not going to. And the reason for that is the only thing that's going to increase the alcohol content is going to be your during distillation. So the fact that we haven't distilled it again, it's just been the beer that was put into the whiskey barrel. It doesn't change its ABV. So alcohol by volume is still going to be 40% or 80 proof. With that, the tasting notes are going to be more on the darker kind of stout side. So a little bit of a chocolate, a little bit of kind of more like a coffee bean, and a little bit more of a caramel smoothness into it as well. And it's just delightful. It's great.
And this is the first one that came out in the series. There's been 2 in the main lineup of Caskmates. Second is the IPA edition.
That's correct.
There.
I do. So the Caskmates range is a very, very special range to us. It's actually the number 2 selling Irish whiskey in America after Jameson Original. So in its first year, Jameson Caskmates Stout Edition, it hit 2 million cases just in America alone. And we were like, that's incredible. That's great. So with that, we were like, okay, we have a really good product. Like, what are we going to do with this? And we decided we were going to introduce an IPA edition. So for anyone who doesn't know what IPA stands for, originally it stands for Indian Pale Ale, but for the case of Jameson, it stands for Irish Pale Ale. And basically, pale ales first came about back in the 1600s when England was exporting to India and they were utilizing those new trade routes. And basically, they would send their beer over to India. And by the time it got the British beer got from Britain or England over to India, it had spoiled. It wasn't able to survive those long voyages. So the Brits were like, okay, we're sick of this. We really want to use these new trade routes. But by the time our product gets there, it's spoiled. It's not good enough to be able to drink. What are we going to do? So it was back before there was mass production or anything that we could use to artificially add into your product. You know, you had to use anything that was natural. And they decided to have a look and explore and see what naturally they could use to preserve their beer. So they found that a natural preservative was going to be hops. Now, hops are kind of like a floral little plant, and you use them in beer production. And basically, you have a million different types of hops. The one that we use are American Citra hops. And the American Citra hops are going to add more of a citrus note, a little bit of an orange peel, lemon zest, and obviously a hoppy component. And that's pretty much what the Jameson Caskmates IPA edition is. So it's the same story. We gave our barrels to the brewery. They were empty. They didn't have Jameson in them anymore. They decided to put their IPA, their Irish Pale Ale, into the whiskey barrels, let that sit for a couple of weeks, couple of months, and then we took them back, emptied out the barrels, and put regular Jameson back into them. And the regular Jameson absorbed all that IPA flavor. And that's how we got this beautiful product. Ooh.
That's lovely. The IPA is lovely with tonic water. It's a lovely cocktail, ice, tonic water.
Yep. So we have a really good selection of different cocktails on our website as well. If you go to jamesonirishwhiskey.com, and on the right-hand side of the page, you can see their drinks, and it breaks it down into the different marks, the different SKUs, and you can select which product you have, and loads of different options there. So one of them that's really easy to do as well, it's called the Spring Chick, and it has Jameson Caskmates IPA edition, some soda water and some tonic water. It's equal parts of both and a splash of lime, and you're off to the races. Super easy, really good summer.
Off to the races.
That's it.
I have had the question in the past if the stout that's used in Caskmates is Guinness, and of course it's not.
Absolutely. It's not. We have no affiliation with Diageo other than the fact that Guinness is also made in Ireland. That's about where the affiliation stops.
This is surprising how quickly this became the second best-selling Irish whiskey in America, in the world, after Jameson Original.
Yeah.
Bartenders love it for cocktails. I know I've had some good old fashions with Caskmates Stout Edition too.
Yeah, I love a good Irish coffee with Caskmates as well. And then another great cocktail that are very prevalent actually in Boston, which was something I did not realize until I moved here. But an espresso martini, And the reason being, I guess, is Bostonians just love coffee. They love it in any form. And if you can add it into a cocktail with some whiskey as well, they are sold. So a really simple recipe for this is, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it's, I believe, 1.5 parts Jameson Caskmates Stout Edition, half parts Kahlua, quarter parts Bailey's, splash of half and half. And you just put it into a shaker, mix it up, and you have your little espresso martini. It's kind of like an espresso martini, a White Russian, I guess.
I love a good Irish whiskey cocktail, and there's many purists will say that you shouldn't ever use a good Irish whiskey in a cocktail. And I would say the only thing you should use in a cocktail is good Irish whiskey. The better the ingredients, the better the product.
My favorite cocktail is a Redbreast 12 whiskey sour, but you have to have the egg whites. The egg whites make it so it foams and it froths at the top. I think we've had a couple.
If you're just, we've had a couple of those in the past. Yeah, we have. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Lisa McGrath, who is telling us the stories and sharing the sips of Jameson tonight. We are here on the Lock-in Livestream, and our goal is to bring people together. It's to build a community. It's to celebrate each other. It's to toast each other's health. And what I've loved over the past few months, we started this the week of St. Patrick's Day back in March, and we've been doing this every single Friday. We haven't missed a Friday, and I have no intention of missing a Friday. And what I've loved most about this is, as I scroll through the names, the comments that are coming in, I start to see the same faces, the same names coming back again and again. And I'm witnessing an enormous, engaging, incredible community of Irish whiskey fans that's building up around this live stream. And I've gotten to know some of you through this. Sometimes I don't know what you even look like. I just know your names. We've had great chats back and forth, and the community is becoming very strong. This week, I was sad to hear that one of our community members is not doing well at all, and his family reached out to let me know that he sadly, one of our community members had a stroke last week and is not doing very well. And so I said that I'd give him a shout out and kind of send best wishes for him on his way and make sure that he has, we're hoping that he has a full recovery. And it's just a reminder that we never know when anything can happen, and those that are close to us are super important. And so kind of reach out to somebody that you love and tell them. But what I want to do is I do want to raise a glass to him. I won't share his name, but I want to raise a glass, just say, best wishes, good luck, get well soon. I'd love if anybody else on the stream could do the same. Type in your comments, just say get well soon. He'll be, his wife will be relaying some information to him. But it's always shocking to see when something like that happens to somebody. So Sláinte, get well soon. We're having a drink for you. And if you're enjoying these live streams, you're enjoying the community. Look, this community has only built up because you've shared with friends, with family members, that there's this thing that happens, and it's a bit of crack, it's a bit of fun on a Friday. So I don't ask for much very often, but when I do, I'd love if you were able to do something for me. And that is, if you're enjoying this tonight, just click on the share button. Share this live stream, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. Just click share and tell people why you like this, why you're enjoying it, and encourage your friends to join us. You can do it on Facebook, you can do it on YouTube, you can do it on Twitter. I try and keep these live streams as sales free and no pitching, but rather it's a bit of crack and a bit of community, but it'll only succeed if more people join. And the more people that join in, the more fun things we can do, and the more chance we have of getting wonderful people like Lisa to come and join us and tell the stories of their products as well. So let's grow this community, give it a share, and I'll be very happy with you. So anyway, enough of that. We're drinking Jameson Caskmates. I'm enjoying it. We're having a bit of crack. There's a few facts I want us to talk about, Lisa. I want to throw up here, because one of the questions here, we won't answer it, but we'll answer it in a kind of circuitous way.
Okay.
And here's the facts that we want to talk about. Let me put it up on the screen. Jameson wasn't sold by the bottle until 1968. Let's talk about that.
That is correct. So up until then, we were using a lot of different kind of like the trend at the time were wine merchants, and we were selling a lot of bond, and for that reason, we would sell our product by the cask load and by the barrel load to all these different distributors, and they would bottle it themselves. And a huge example of this, kind of outside of the realm of Jameson, but if you're looking at people like the Mitchell and Sons, or if you're thinking of the Gilbeys and Sons and all those, when you're looking at Redbreast and Spots, basically what happened was we would produce the whiskey and then we would sell it to these other distributors under bond. And it was called under bond because they would then bond them themselves, and they were known as bonders. It was the bonder era. And they would then sell it on to their own consumers. And it was the same with Jameson. We would sell them directly to pubs and to restaurants, and they would then have the cask or they bottled it themselves and they would sell it to their consumer. What we found was a lot of the time, in order to make a cheap buck or whatever, to use the colloquial terms over here, but what we found was that a lot of the times, pubs and restaurants in particular, they were cutting our product with water and they were watering it down to be able to make the bottle go the distance. And it cheapened our brand. And we decided enough was enough, that we would take all our bottling in-house. And 1968 kind of symbolized the start of that. And our first ever bottle to be bottled at Bow Street was Crested 10. And unfortunately, I saw in the comments asking why it isn't available over in America. I have actually snuck over a couple of bottles before, so if you get in my good graces, I might be able to help you out.
I have a bottle here.
I had a bottle here in Boston, but since lockdown, it's somehow, I think the Angels got into it, the Angel Shear. But it is since gone. But it is an incredible product. And for anyone who is used to the old packaging and wondering, you know, what's the difference between Crested 10 and the new packaging, still the same product, exactly the same liquid. If you recognize the X on the bottle there, that represents the 10 in Roman numerals. So nothing has changed. It's still the minimum age 10-year-old spirit that you guys knew and loved from the old packaging. We just decided to shift from calling it Crested 10 to just Crested and the updated X on the bottle. So, yeah.
And the reason why it's not available in the United States, I mean, we can think about it from a marketing perspective and from a business perspective. Jameson Crested is not a million miles away in terms of a style from Jameson Original. There's a higher percentage of pot still component in this than there is in Jameson Original. But you can imagine that marketing these two things separately, when you have a finite marketing budget, wouldn't be very easy, would it?
It wouldn't be. And yes, Crested 10 is technically a little bit older than Jameson. And if you taste them side by side, you do get a little bit of an insight into the depth and the richness in Crested 10, but like you said, it's not a million miles away from regular Jameson. And just we don't want to saturate the market as well, and we don't want people to be deferred from drinking what we know is successful, what we know is going to, you know, be useful in the market. And completely, there it is, celebrating the first drops bottled in Bow Street in 1968. But
you weren't lying. You weren't lying to us. It was the truth.
I try not to. I'll only lie when I need to, but for the most part, that doesn't happen very often. But for that reason, completely to Barry's point, it is more of a marketing ploy. And when you have a market that is vying for so much attention from Irish whiskies, from American whiskies, from I was going to say Tennessee, but that's obviously American, from Canadian whiskies, from Scotches, from Japanese, the market is just so flooded as well. And we just want to make sure that we are catering to the needs of every individual market, and that we're not just introducing a product for the sake of introducing a product. It makes sense in Ireland because it's bottled there and it's distilled and matured and it's just available there. In terms of introducing it to America, unfortunately, I don't know if there's really a niche for it over here. I know people will probably slaughter me in the comments saying that it's their favorite Irish whiskey and they wish they could get it here. And I do agree, it is a great bottle, but I just don't think there's a big enough segment for it in the US market, unfortunately.
Lisa, keep it for ourselves. You and me, we'll get our own bottles. We won't tell anybody.
Exactly.
Say nothing. Don't be telling people about the good stuff. So every bottle of Jameson, you'll see on the front, there is a crest, a family crest here. And there's a story to the crest. Look at this, right on cue. Lisa, you you know something about this crest and this family motto more than many.
I know I think about it. One might say that I really embody the family motto and the family crest. And what I mean by that is I actually got a little tattoo, my first and only tattoo about a year ago. I don't know how well you can see that. Oh, yeah.
I'll put you up there.
For anyone who needs some glasses or it's a little bit blurry, my tattoo is reflective of what we have here behind me, the little family motto from Jameson. So this crest was awarded to the Jameson family in the 1500s for protecting the Northern Sea against pirates. And what you'll find under every single crest and on every single bottle of Jameson is, I'm trying to angle it here, but I don't know if the camera is good enough. Kinda, yeah, oh, almost. Okay, it's very blurry, but you can see here that it says, under the crest, it says Cinemetu. And that's what I have tattooed on my, up here, exactly, Cinemetu. Have that tattooed on my forearm of my left arm. And what it means is it's Latin and it translates to without fear. And like I said, it was awarded to the Jameson family in the 1500s for protecting the Northern Sea against pirates. And the reason I decided to get it tattooed on myself for all eternity is because I just feel that it kind of embodies my journey with Jameson so far. That I left college, I was 22, started a new job, moved to France, didn't know anyone, had what I thought was a fairly good level of French until I got to France and was trying to work over there and realized it wasn't as good as it was. And I then left my French market after establishing myself there for a year and moved abroad to America. Had never set foot in America before, decided to come over here. Went to Columbus, Ohio for a year where I met a lovely Irish whiskey Barry. I was actually there for 2 years. Left there, moved to Boston, and I've now been living my life here as much without fear as possible. So that's why I decided to get it tattooed on myself, because I just feel like I wouldn't be the person I am today, and I wouldn't be where I am physically, mentally, or in my career without Jameson. So any avenue, any path that I pursue in the future, I'm going to be molded and shaped because of my experience on my discovery of Jameson. So that's why I decided to get it tattooed on myself.
And Lisa, you told me off the air that your next tattoo was going to be a face tattoo of barley, like down the left side. Is that true?
It's like, you know, the way Post Malone has like face tattoos. I was like, okay, so what can I do? I can get like a barley here. I can get like a pot still here. Maybe like a little bit of the, you know, Bow Street Distillery on my forehead, just as much branding and marketing as possible. So when I walk into a room, people really know who I work for. I don't even need to open my mouth. Maybe Jameson, like just on the inner set of my lips, like that, you know, thinking outside the box. Yeah.
Well, you do have a company credit card, so I feel like you could expense these things fairly easily, couldn't you?
Well, the funny thing is my Cinemetu tattoo, I actually brought a group of bartenders to a local tattoo artist in Columbus, and we all got tattoos. So I'm not the only one who is going around with the Cinemetu. Actually, I was the only one to get the Cinemetu. But if you want to flash up on the screen there again, the crest, and if you have a look at the top of the crest, you'll see a little boat. About 4 people got that boat on the same day that I got my Cinemetu tattoo. And the boat represents the boats that were used to sail the Northern Sea to protect the Northern Sea against pirates. So that's why that's included, along with the little anchors on the crest as well. It's reflective of the boats that were used. And yeah, about 4 of my bartending friends in Columbus have that tattooed on themselves. So very exciting.
Andrew asks if that was after a bender with me. No telling what the next morning looks like. You wake up with tattoos and all kinds.
Ask Barry where his tattoo is. He chickened out. We'll get him someday.
We're not allowed to show Tullamore Dew tattoos. You know that, right?
What are you doing? No. That caught me deep.
I caught you off guard there. David has a question. He's asking about his Caskmates stouts as a white upper label rather than the dark. Okay, so those are just early labelings. The labeling has evolved over the years.
Exactly. So the reason for that is, and great question, I'm really glad that you brought this about, is because when Caskmates first came about, it came about in 2016. I had just started on my whiskey journey. And the reason for that is it's the old label. So what happened was when we first introduced Caskmates, it was Caskmates Stout Edition. There were no other editions. It was the original one. And for that reason, we were like, okay, we'll come up with this and we'll put it out there and it's great or whatever. And then we decided to go from this one. Let me see if I can get my right and left correct. This one, the Jameson Caskmates Stout, we developed into the Caskmates IPA edition, and you'll see that on these bottles it's very easy to see where the stout says it and where the IPA says it. Oh no, I did them backwards. I can't get used to the mirroring, but
you can't. Have you ever used a camera before? No,
not in the reverse, no. So the stout one and the IPA, so that's why we needed to update the label so that when it was on the back bar, the bartender and the consumer was very easy. It was very easy for them to recognize the fact that this one clearly said stout and this one clearly said IPA. Also, with the old bottling, the old labeling, it was very difficult to read the fact that it said stout. Yes, you could see the fact that it emblazoned Caskmates across the top, but the old bottle, I believe, was in a black background and white upper casing, and then the word stout was written in a gold lettering, which was really, really hard to read on the bottle, even when you had it in front of you, let alone on a back bar. So for that reason, when the IPA came into the family, we decided to update the labeling so that if I'm sitting behind the bar, looking at the back bar, I can easily see and differentiate between the two. And that's the reason why. But the liquid gone into the updated bottle is exactly the same as the liquid gone into the old bottle. So shouldn't be differences in taste there.
Simple as that. And Lisa wouldn't lie to us.
I wouldn't.
It's a fact.
I got to. My mum told me that.
There's what I love too about when we do these live streams, we attract people from all over the world, from Ireland, from Northern Ireland, from Canada, from Japan, from Australia. And as people ask questions, if we don't get to them in time, because I'm too busy supping on my whiskey and having the crack, others are in there answering the questions, which is great. And I see a good thread going there about the different Caskmates that exist around the world. So in addition to these two that are out there, Lisa, there's a thing called the hyper-local program as well, isn't there?
There is. And basically the hyper-local is an opportunity for markets globally to be able to engage with their own breweries, and something that would bring passion and bring inspiration and just like a really, really good feeling about the community at that locality, because that's what we are at Jameson. We're all about bringing the community together. I already mentioned a previous tagline being, we're the serious whiskey that doesn't take ourselves too seriously, but we're also a whiskey that's approachable, that's accessible, and that just wants to bring the community together. And the way that we have found that's been very engaging and very, very positive and proactive about doing this is by engaging with local brewery partners. So for anyone who's over in America, we have a program set up at the moment. It's called our Drinking Buddies program. And we currently have 23 different breweries that we work with across America. So what we do is we do kind of similar things like we do in Ireland with the Caskmates range, but we'll give them empty Jameson barrels and they'll put their beer in it. And they have two options. They can either create a hyper-local whiskey, or they can create their own beer out of our Jameson barrels. So that's kind of what the hyper-local program is, that we work very closely with breweries over here to be able to create a local Jameson using a local brewery. So, for example, some really big ones were like Green Flash, when we used to work with them over in Denver for their localized beer. Then we had Captain Lawrence before that we've worked with. I used to work with Fatheads in Ohio. We would give them empty Jameson barrels and they'd make their barrel-aged beer. But I know, for example, there are some whiskeys that have come out of that as well. There was a really successful one in Chicago. We had ones coming out in New York as well. And it's almost become kind of like this Easter egg hunt, that people see that these whiskeys are being created locally, and we'll try and gather all of them and just make sure that they have the full set. It's becoming quite quite the exploration and quite the endeavor.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's more. There are more beers that have been aged in Jameson barrels than whiskey that has been aged in or finished in beer barrels for obvious reasons. And the Caskmates program, nobody expected it to take off the way it did.
No.
When it first launched, it was an experimental release, and very quickly demand outpaced supply. And so, in fact, today Irish distillers who have never been in the beer business now own a brewery that makes all of the beer that goes into seasoning those barrels, don't they?
Yeah, so we, about a year and a half ago, we decided that we were going to acquire our own brewery so that we could have a local brewery in Ireland that would be responsible for the production of Jameson Caskmates. The name of that brewery is 8 Degrees, and it's about an hour outside of where I live back home in Ireland. So it's a Waterford-based brewery, and basically we use them for all our production needs. For the Caskmates. So we'll give them empty Jameson barrels and they will fill it up with their locally produced, locally sourced beer in order to be able to fulfill that demand. And just kind of circling that back a little bit to bring it a bit closer to home in America. So I don't know how many beer drinkers we have on the line, or if we have any, or people who just like beer or alcohol in general. I quite like alcohol in general, so I love beer as well. But we were very fortunate to be the first ever spirit sponsor at Great American Beer Fest, which is the largest American beer fest in the US. And it takes place every year, typically September, October time in Denver, Colorado. And we were, I think it was the year before I moved here. So I hate saying dates because I'm always scared that I'm going to get them wrong. But it was not this year, but last year. So what was that? And it was 2018 because it was my second year in Columbus. So
that's right.
We were the first ever spirit sponsor at the Great American Beer Fest. And we opened up a beautiful area where we had all our, I think it was 17 brewery partners that we had at the time. We now have 23. We brought all of them to life. You came in, you could taste the beer, you could smell it. And it was the first release of our barrel-aged beers with all of these breweries, and it was a great experience to be able to not just show them that, you know, we had a whiskey side, but we actually tapped into this beer market and we're this huge sponsor of the Great American Beer Fest. That's no mean feat that any other whiskey has ever tapped into before.
It's not.
And I went there, I actually had the pleasure of working it, and you could not go from A to B without seeing some advertisement of Jameson being a Great American Beer Fest sponsor during that week. And it was incredible. The amount of
And I know that the
Caskmates
program, it's inspired many other whiskey companies to embark on beer and whiskey collaborations since the success. So Jameson has been laying the groundwork. There was one point you shared there, Lisa, that I'm not letting you get away with. I love how you tried to claim that Waterford is the home of 8 Degrees. The cheek, the chancer that you are. Isn't 8 Degrees in Mitchelstown in County Cork?
It's close enough to Waterford. It's like an hour drive.
Close enough. Borders are only constructs in our mind.
Exactly.
This is the problem that Cork has been dealing with for many years.
It's County Waterford.
No. Listen, when we do something good in Cork, people all over the world try and claim it. And to think that our neighbours to the east in Waterford would try and claim something from Cork. Is there nothing safe?
I think we're going to have to do a Google search at some point, because I think there might be some discrepancies about where it is actually located.
Are you joking?
I genuinely thought it was County Waterford. I'm not trying to take it from you, but I did really think it was County Waterford.
I mean, I hope you're not asking me to put up a screenshot here of their Google map location.
I mean, I'm not. You said that with too much conviction, so I'm definitely not.
North County Cork, Mitchelstown, County Cork, the home of 8 Degrees. Waterford is the home of a sandwich or a piece of bread called a blah, and that is is that the greatest thing to come out of Waterford?
I would say that after myself. You know, we have to credit where credit's due, Barry. That and red lead. Have you ever had a red lead blah? Oh, off to the
What's
races.
red lead?
Red lead is luncheon meat. Like your Billy luncheon meat. Do you know what that is?
Like with a face on it? Like
Yeah.
Spam or something?
Yeah. Or we have, so it's called red lead. It's basically the equivalent of Spam. It's like processed Irish meat, and it's terrible for you. But that in a blah with some Kerrygold Irish butter, oh, can't beat it. Can't beat it. It's great.
With a stick. Can't beat it with a stick.
Can't beat it with a stick. We still have another week to go.
Tell me about, so what do you miss about Waterford apart from the bread?
Well, my family.
Bread, family.
Priorities. It's all about priorities. And a good 99 for anyone who's ever been to Ireland. And if you haven't had a 99, do you know a 99 and Dooley's chips? Dooley's, for anyone who doesn't know, which no one's going to know, is a chipper. And for anyone who doesn't know what a chipper is, it's what you guys call fries. But they're really thick cut potato fries, and saturated in sodium and salt and vinegar, and that with a battered sausage and a 99 down by the pier. Can't beat it with a shtick.
2:30 in the morning after coming out of the nightclub, straight into Dooley's.
No, if we're coming out to the nightclub, what I miss the most is a half and half from Noodle Box. And what that is, I'm on a tangent now, but a half and half from Noodle Box is going to be half rice, half chips, fries, smothered in curry sauce, or my favorite, sweet and sour sauce. Unbelievable.
Oh, lovely.
Let's get back to whiskeys. Black Barrel.
But listen, okay. But listen, Black Barrel is next. But let me ask you this:
Yes.
Do you like chips? Do you like chips with mayonnaise and cheese in them, or would you be more the curry sauce person?
So I would say I'm quite traditional when it comes to chips. I like just like a little bit of salt, and then I would have maybe like I do like a curry sauce. It depends where I get them from. So if I get them from Supermax, which we don't have in the US, unfortunately, but Supermax is an interesting phenomenon because it's an Irish-owned company, but then they recently, in the last maybe 10 years, introduced Papa John's into them, which is not an Irish company. So now you go to a Supermax and you have your Supermax is kind of like the Burger King meets McDonald's, but is Irish for anyone on the line who's never heard of Supermax before. So you have your Supermax shite going on, and then you turn to the left and you just have Papa John's, which is obviously pizza, which I'm very happy about. I love pizza. But if I go into a Supermax, then I would love a curry cheese chip. So that's going to be your fries smothered in curry sauce, a little bit of cheese on top. But if I'm just going to the chipper, then it's a battered sausage, chips. No, I'm not one of these. Oh, you know what I do love? Garlic sauce. Love garlic sauce. You can't put it over here though. Here it's like an oil, but back home it's like the consistency of ranch, but it's garlic. It's great. But yeah, no, if I go to the chipper, battered sausage and chips, no vinegar, just salt. That's the way.
So you're tuned into Lisa's menu preferences for Ireland edition of the live stream.
Exactly.
Hopefully you're all hungry.
And then I obviously knock it back with some Jameson. That's the only way to do it.
Lovely segue into Jameson Black Barrel.
The product after my own heart. So
what have we here?
We have a very special Irish whiskey. For anyone who doesn't know, and was kind of like a couple of years ago, I believe it was 2016 that we changed our bottling. Basically, this is kind of like Jameson's response to the bourbon drinker. And what I say by that is that we use a double charred bourbon barrel coming from Kentucky. So what used to happen was when we first started using our bourbon barrels, it was back in the 1950s. We first imported bourbon barrels from Kentucky over here in America. We would get them from Kentucky, bring them over to Ireland. And at that time, believe it or not, we did not have the capacity for 1.75 million casks. So the little cask would make its journey from Kentucky over to Ireland, and it would have to sit outside for a little bit because we didn't have the capacity to store it inside. For anyone who's ever been to Ireland before, you'll know that it's raining more times often than when it's not. So this little bourbon barrel is sitting outside in the rain, just gathering water because it can't be stored inside. And when it came to using the bourbon barrel, we couldn't because it was saturated from the rain. So we're very resilient in Ireland, aren't we, Barry? We don't give up, especially after all the money and resources and everything else that were deployed into getting the little bourbon barrel over to Ireland. So instead of hanging our heads in despair, we decided, well, what can we do to dry out the barrel? And we knew that coming over from America, it had already been charred one time. So we got a flamethrower and charred the interior. The reason for charring the interior of any kind of a barrel is twofold. So first of all, it dries out the wood. It makes it more accessible to be able to get access to those flavors and those different characteristics of the wood. And second of all, it eliminates any impurities in the wood. So you're not going to get any pieces of wood floating around in the barrel because they've been kind of like sealed in with this this coating, this flame throwing of the wood. So when we got them over to Ireland, we saw that they had already been flame thrown one time. They'd already been charred. We were like, well, they've already done it one time in America. What's to stop us from doing it a second time in Ireland? And we decided there was nothing stopping us. So that's what we did. We decided to char them a second time. And for anyone wondering, it is a 5th degree char that we use. And we charred them a second time, and we found that this caused a caramelization of the wood. So it really opened up those kind of characteristics, those bourbon characteristics, a little bit of a toffee, caramel, fudge, vanilla, opened up into the whiskey. And that is what Jameson Black Barrel is. It is a double charred Irish whiskey that has been aged for a minimum of 10 years, 10 to 12 years is the age on this product. And that's why I say it's like Jameson's response to the bourbon drinker. You have all the characteristics of a bourbon, but it's an Irish whiskey. So kind of like the marriage of two great products into one. And I mentioned before that you might have heard of the Select Reserve. When we changed our product over in 2016, we decided to change the packaging to this clear bottle because we found when you look at a back bar, which one looks more like a bourbon? Not this one, because it has the clear bottle, it has the corkscrew, and it has just kind of more of that darker coloring, whereas the green bottle was more synonymous with an Irish whiskey. So from a marketing perspective, we decided to make the shift from the old green bottle and the screw top of the Select Reserve, and we adjusted over to the clear bottle and the corkscrew, which makes a lovely pop. Oh, I can't open it. There we go.
You'll be thirsty. There you go.
I know. I was like validating here. So we made the transition just from more of an aesthetic standpoint that people would associate it with it being a bourbon rather than an Irish whiskey, just from consumer mentality. But if you have a bottle of Select Reserve, it's exactly the same product as in this.
So a bit like you've seen the evolution of the labels of Caskmates, there's an evolution in the labels of Jameson Black Barrel. Today, the twice charring happens on the American side, and they come over twice charred to Ireland. And it is there's something unique about this. Take this AirPod out. Giving me feedback. There's something unique about this particular blend because it's not a typical blend compared to the other blends. When we look at a Crested, or when we look at a Caskmates, or when we look at a Jameson Original, it's a blended whiskey because it's got two different styles of whiskey in it. It's got a pot still whiskey. All three of these have pot still components, and they have a grain component. And the grain component in all three of these is what? Corn or maize from south of France. Black Barrel is a blended whiskey, but it's different. Yes, it has a grain whiskey, but the grain is actually barley. It's barley that has gone through the tall column still. So anytime you put any grain through the column still, you create a grain whiskey. And what's unique about this is that this contains, well, really 100% Irish products because it's all barley. So I think it's once or twice a year, the barley grain whiskey is distilled through the column stills in Middleton, and that is then used to create the Black Barrel blended together with the pot still whiskey. There's no other whiskey from the Middleton distillery that does that. Blackbush might do something like that, but from Middleton,
Yeah.
It's unique. And I think that's something that's not often talked about. It blew my mind when I first heard about it.
Yeah, so what we call that, that's referred to as small batch grain whiskey. And basically it's called small batch because of the quantities that it's done in and the limited amount of times that it's done throughout the year. So that was another reason for rebranding when we transitioned out of the Select Reserve, because technically it was called Jameson Small Batch Black Barrel Select Reserve. No, sorry, Jameson Small Batch. What was it? Jameson Small Batch.
Jameson Reserve.
No,
Jameson
it was just
Small
Batch Select Reserve, and there was another
Select
title,
Reserve. Yeah.
Another title underneath it. There were like 3 layers to it, and it was just very convoluted and very hard to read on the bottle. So we decided to scrap all that, transition away from the small batch, because people were kind of getting a little bit too hung up on what that meant as well. And we decided to just relabel it as that was it, Jameson Small Batch Select Reserve Black Barrel.
That's right. And in fact, in South Africa, to add confusion, I don't think we've any South African listeners currently, but those of you in South Africa will still see the other label, the Jameson Select Reserve Small Batch Black Barrel, whereas here we see this label.
And a little note, something that I love about the actual bottle there, and it was only when you turn the bottle that I remembered to even say it, but here on the crest, can't get my right and left. Yeah, here you'll see that there's a little mark. And no, I didn't get some mascara and just smudge it on and send Barry a bottle as well. This is actually on every single label, and it represents the second charring. So it's almost like the bottle itself has been touched by fire. And I think it's a lovely detail. It's very minute and very few know about it, but that's what that little smudge on the bottle is. It's almost as if the bottle itself was touched by fire to represent that second charring. I think it's a gorgeous detail of the packaging.
It is lovely. Let me see. There was a question here from, so many questions flying in, it's tough to keep up with them. Ronan has a question which we'll answer very quickly. Are the barrels used as they arrived, or are they remade? No, they arrive completely made. They're inspected. They're shipped over. They don't arrive on pallets like taken apart as staves. They arrive fully made, and then they're inspected in the distillery before being filled. So
I'm actually going to maybe interject there, and I'm so sorry to correct you, but as the barrels arrive into Ireland, they're actually broken down as individual staves, and
every one of them,
once from America, because it's to save on packaging,
shipping air.
So in order to make the maximized amount of the space available, they're all deconstructed, and then when they get to Middleton, they're remade at Middleton. And that's why it's just so impressive by the amount of
interesting
that's gone into rebuilding one of those barrels when they come over to the Middleton distillery.
And are they remade on site in Middleton? Is that where they're remade?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? We learn something new every day. David says he thinks only Teeling bring over pre-made barrels. How about that? I am gobsmacked. Thank you for that, Lisa. Appreciate it. Caroline says Black Barrel is her favorite Jameson, along with Distiller Safe. Let me see.
Distiller Safe here as well, as you will see.
Look at that. You're like a walking advertisement for Jameson. Let me see. Shipping density saves costs. Ger Buckley is a busy man. He is a busy man. Yeah, I don't know anything about the rebuilding of them, so I've got to learn about this. But thank you for that.
Of course.
Let me see what else. We've got a few other interesting questions here I want to get to. Tatsuya asks if it means that the distillery hand fill is the same, only Ireland-made ingredients. So when I say only Ireland-made ingredients, so I'm making one big assumption here, that if this is only made with barley, and if Jameson talks about barley only coming from within 100 miles of the distillery, I'm making this not such a huge leap, but that the grain barley is Irish too.
There's been nothing to correct that or to make any other assumption rather than it being, actually no, I've learned that it is, it's the same barley that we are hand selecting and utilizing within a 100-mile radius of the distillery. So it's the same when we harvest that barley. It's not like, okay, we're going to use this for single pot stills and that's it. You know what I mean? It's harvested and then we have it in the warehouse and we use it accordingly to our needs.
Right. Yeah. The hand fill that Tatsuya is mentioning is, if you go to Jameson, Bow Street, Home, or Middleton, you can fill your own bottle of Black Barrel straight from the cask, and it is at cask strength. So in other words, it's not cut down to the 40% or the 80 proof that this is. So you might get it at 60% or 59.8%. You'll pay about €100 a bottle. It's an incredible whiskey. Anything at cask strength to me is incredible, and it means you get to control the flavor profile by adding your little drops of water. Patrick asks if we work with specific distilleries. So there's a middleman in between Middleton and the distilleries. There's a broker, a barrel broker that works with many different distilleries, don't they?
And I have gotten that question before. You know, it's like, oh, do you work with Jack Daniels, or who is it? Like, who is your provider of bourbon barrels? And we're kind of protective to an extent, but I can say that if you do have a look at some of our bourbon barrels, you will see 4 Roses stamped on them or Wild Turkey. So we do have a good relationship with both of those distilleries.
You've heard it here. 4 Roses and Wild Turkey. But there's many more, and it's amazing because, you know, we're very fortunate in Ireland that the bourbon industry is so successful, because it allows us to get access to the barrels. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that if it wasn't for us Irish being so good at distilling and then emigrating to the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, there'd be nobody distilling in America at all. And so I just want to put that in there so that we're all well aware of what's going on.
For the Irish.
Okay, so this is Jameson Black Barrel. It's a lovely drop of whiskey. It was one of my first introductions to Irish whiskey. I love it. Before I fell in love with Redbreast, this would have been my daily sipper.
Now, I would say out of the Jameson portfolio that this is probably my favorite. I think it goes, the way I always describe it when I'm talking to bartenders is that it is complex enough that it carries through the complexity in a cocktail. For example, like an old-fashioned Manhattan whiskey sour. I mentioned before that my favorite cocktail is a whiskey sour with Redbreast 12, but out of the Jameson portfolio, a red whiskey sour with Jameson Black Barrel is second to none. I think it's incredible. It carries through this complexity of a great Irish whiskey without the need for a very high price tag. And what I mean by that is, in the States, you would see Black Barrel retailing from, I'm going to give a very broad approximation because I know we have probably a lot of different states here, some controlled, some open, but you would see Black Barrel around the $38 to $43 price mark. And for that reason,
amazing value.
It for a 10-year-old whiskey, that's incredible. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time it's overlooked because it doesn't have an age statement on it. But I think in terms of value, in terms of complexity, in terms of flavor, in terms of just the story behind Black Barrel, I think it should be held in a much higher regard, and that's why it's by far my favorite in the Jameson portfolio. I think it's an incredible whiskey.
Steve raises a question that gets asked often, and it's a natural question because there's curiosity around barrels. When people start to put the numbers together and the dates, and they start to realize, well, you started getting your bourbon barrels in the 1950s. What did you use before? And of course, we used barrels from the continent, mainland Europe, Spain, Portugal, France, etc. Sherry barrels, port, wine. We had access to barrels before the bourbon industry, of course.
So the way that I always address that question, because you're not the first and you're definitely not going to be the last to address it, but the way I say is that with such a global impactful brand like Jameson, we're always innovating, we're always recreating ourselves, we're also always redefining the barriers and the measures of success for ourselves. And with that, we have to constantly be up to date with technologies, we have to be up to date with different production processes and practices. So with that, basically, the original recipe that was used for Jameson Original has been I'm going to be very careful with my language here, but it has been adapted to deal with the times and the differences in production processes. So we will go out of our way and we'll go out of our way just to ensure that it's as consistent as it was 100 years ago. But definitely developments in globalization and production processes and different. Oh, my Fitbit just told me I did 10,000 steps and I have.
That's just raising your hand.
Yeah. But talking like all the time. But to combat and answer that question, we have kept it as consistent and as comparable to it being made 100 years ago, but have implemented new production processes. So we don't want to fall behind the times. We don't want to become outdated. But every so often in the realm of whiskey, there will be tweaks to the recipes, to the production processes, to the making of the whiskey to ensure that it is reflective of the technologies and the production processes that are available at that time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The whiskeys we have today, let's be honest, they bear barely a resemblance to those of a century ago because of our advances in wood management, our advances in distillation, our advances in our scientific understanding is very different today. Think about things like when Jameson moved from Dublin down to Middleton, the entire style of whiskey shifted.
Everything was changed, yeah.
It changed, and it went from being a pot still whiskey to introducing a blended whiskey to compete, of course, with lighter blends from Scotland. So it's very tough to compare them. But I would say that the wood management program at Middleton Distillery is revered the world over, and there's now 33 distilleries operating in Ireland. Middleton runs classes and programs to help distilleries understand wood management and how to maximize their maturation and ensure that what they're releasing is a quality product, such as the knowledge and the desire that those new distilleries that come online don't in any way lose the quality of the process that has been built up over the years. So I think that, while barrels have come from different places, in the future they may come from different places again as we learn more about what's going to help create better flavor profiles, better maturation, better whiskey.
Exactly. And like going back to the point, and for anyone who's just now tuning in, you might have heard this point earlier. At any given day, we have 1.75 million barrels at the Middleton Distillery in County Cork. So in order to be as resourceful and cognizant of different factors that just impact a business, you need to be willing to change with the times and make strategic business moves in order to ensure that you are getting the most out of your product. And you can't be stuck back in prior to the 1950s being like, okay, well, at the time we only had European oak available to us. We suddenly have American oak available to us. We can impart different notes and different characteristics and flavor profiles and get a better deal and just be strategic in our business model by exploring these other avenues. It would be I think it would be detrimental to us if we just dug our heels in the ground and decided, this is the way it has been for 200 years, without changing anything. And it's just being cognizant of the fact that industry changes on a daily basis. I mean, who would have thought that we would be doing a live stories and sips from Boston to Cali because of quarantine, The time you have to be willing to...
You have to adapt.
Yes, exactly. Adapt and overcome. And that's for anyone who ever asks me that question, I'm like, no business that you look at is exactly the same today as it was 100 years ago because it can't afford to be. If you want to survive and you want to thrive and you want to be at 71% market share for overall whiskey and Irish whiskey in the US, you have to be willing to adapt. And
so one of my favorite whiskeys this year is Redbreast 27-year-old, and that's got a component whiskey, Redbreast port, like a whiskey that has been aged in port, formerly port pipes. There's been no historical that we know Redbreast aged in port, yet it was deemed brand aligned because it's a fortified wine, and the Redbreast portfolio is really defined by its fortified wine components. If you were to just say, we can only ever have sherry and bourbon be part of Redbreast. We'd never have a Redbreast 27-year-old. I know for a fact that there are other incredible aged whiskies hiding in warehouses like old Madeira casks with 30-year-old pot still whiskey that have yet to see the light of day. Those will at some point end up, hopefully, in an expression, be it in a Method and Madness expression or something, where we get to see these. But those were experiments that were started 30 years ago. And I think we'll see more of those where things will start today, and we won't see the fruits of that labor for another quarter century.
100%. And even if you look at Middleton and their silent expressions and everything like that, and everything coming out of Redbreast at the moment, and it's even the reintroduction of Red Spot, you know, it's just looking at the realm of Irish whiskey and seeing where we can innovate and tap into the demand for Irish whiskey. And honestly, it's during the 1970s, Irish whiskey nearly became extinct. You had things like World War I, Prohibition, World War II, the Irish famine, if you want to date back that far. Irish whiskey was nearly extinct as a category. That was 40 years ago. And if you look at the development of Irish whiskey since then, there were 3 distilleries back in the 1970s.
Right.
That's now developed to 33 today.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredible, the resilience and the tenacity of the realm of Irish whiskey. And I just hope it continues to drive value the way that it is at the moment, because it's a magical place to be a part of at the moment, and seeing these new expressions and the new realm of creativity that's coming out of Ireland in terms of Irish whiskies at the moment is inspirational for what's to come in the future.
And there are a number of new expressions that are going to be coming out of the Middleton distillery this year, which cannot be discussed openly and publicly, but stay tuned, because there's incredible releases both for the US market and the rest of the world that you're going to see, that I know we're going to spend a lot of time on here because we enjoy some of these products so much. Tatsuya has a question: which pot still distillate is used for Jameson? I've heard that Redbreast 27 uses all. So Middleton distillery predominantly produces, well, it was the only distillery in Ireland, of course, producing pot still for so many years. Almost, I think, well, all of the products coming out of Middleton contain pot still. There are different levels of pot still. There's a number of different styles of pot still whiskey, be they, I won't get this right, heavy, medium, pot still distillates, and depending on what whiskey they are destined for, be it Powers or Redbreast or spot whiskies, that's where those distillates will end up. So Redbreast uses one style of distillate. The spot whiskies might use another style, and even within the spot range, Green Spot uses one style of distillate, Yellow Spot uses another, and so they're distributed amongst the range.
Even within the distillates, so that they're, you know, you have a pot still distillate, they're all ranked and have their own different contributions. So you might even have one that's named pot still distillate 51. That's the level that the master distillers will get into. That it's very rigid, the parameters that will fall within, and it's very restricted and controlled. So I can't answer to that level, because honestly it's like a science that they have it broken down to a T, that it's like, okay, well, this is pot still distillate number like 52, this is pot still distillate number 17. I don't know the vast range of the distillates that they have available. That's kind of like if you're talking about Coca-Cola, the way they have their own trade secrets, it's the same at Middleton. Unless you're involved with that production process from the ground up, you're not really privy to what that level of detail is, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it does. And whiskey is something you never learn everything about. Like every day is a school day. Like Lisa telling me about the barrels, I learned something new today. And then I remember, Lisa, when we were up in Boston for the launch of the Redbreast small batch, and we were out having drinks with master blender Billy Lighton and blender Dave McCabe. And I asked Dave, I was curious about distillates and pot still distillates, and I asked him about the styles of whiskey that are produced, the styles of pot still, and he shared this beautifully poetic response about the pot still that comes out of the still. And he leaned in and he said, the whiskey that comes out of the still doesn't yet know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, that was just one of these simple mind-blowing statements where he personified the spirit. and said it doesn't yet know what it's going to be. And he said himself that when he started working in the distillery, he was blown away by the fact that you don't distill Jameson, you don't distill Redbreast, you don't distill spot whiskies. They're created as a kind of a collaboration between the distillation, the various maturation, the age, the barrel types, etc. But isn't that beautiful thing that the spirit, that lovely clear spirit that comes out of the still, it doesn't yet know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Because there are just so many components that will impact that spirit, that clear spirit that comes out when it first comes out of the barrel, not the barrel, sorry. When it first comes out of the still, it looks like this. It looks like water or vodka or any neutral grain spirit, because that's what it is. And there's so many other things that impact that journey from hot still to the bottle. You know what I mean? And not even just to the bottle, it's the glass. There are just so many contributing factors, and I think I agree. I remember when Dave said that, and it's beautifully put. It was
beautiful.
It was a romanticized version of talking about the distillate and converting it into the actual spirit that we know and love. It was great.
It was one of those statements where when you hear it, you just kind of stare. You stare at him, and then you sit back.
So deep,
and you just sip and you smile. And you go.
Yes, it's like it makes sense bringing it together in my mind. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
So listen, Lisa, you've been here now with us for 2 hours. You never expected to sign up for such a marathon.
Didn't even feel like that.
Marathon.
It's been great. I've had a lot of fun.
We only have 18 more whiskeys to get through over the course of the next 9 or 10 hours.
Sign me up. I'm in. Lock me in. Your lock-in doesn't end until the last glass is empty, Barry. So,
well, we've a bit to go yet, and I have a cupboard behind me. So, listen, if you're just joining us, you're very late. You've missed the best parts, but you can catch the replay. I'm here with Lisa. Last week, 6,500 people watched the lock-in. We're going to try and beat this tonight. Yeah, like I didn't tell you that, Lisa. Yeah.
I'm really glad you didn't.
So at any one time, we have 100, 200 people online who come in and out, and then the replay gets watched over the course of the week. And yeah, for our Dingle lock-in last week, we had 6,500 people. I think we're going to get to 7,000 this week, such is the quality of tonight's show.
I'm happy you didn't tell me before. Otherwise, I would have probably had to do more than just a shot of Jameson cold brew before we began.
So Peter says it's like a new age church service we're having here tonight. There is a lot of kind of coming to Jesus moments with whiskey, isn't there?
Oh, there are, yeah. It's funny, now that we're talking about the religious aspect and Jesus in general, I would be killed if I didn't mention the fact, and this isn't just a marketing ploy, but my mother's favorite drink since I was, I don't know what, like a curly-haired little tot running around the house, like in nappies or diapers for the American market. My mother's favorite drink, and this is no lie, is a Jameson ginger ale and lime. And when I first started working with Jameson, she was like, now Lisa, and she's going to kill me for saying this, but she was like, now Lisa, I hope you know the only reason you got that job is because I'm single-handedly keeping that company afloat. I was like, I know that, Mum, but let's not broadcast that to the masses. And now I've just shared it with people, so you're welcome, Mum.
Mrs. McGrath, your secret's safe with us. There's only a few thousand people watching. No problem at all. I have visions of your mother flicking through her share certificates for Irish distillers or Pernod Ricard.
Yeah. And every time anyone posts anything about Jameson, she's in there faster than Jack Jordan's bull. She's like, okay, Lisa, tagged, shared, Instagrammed, Jameson, you name it. I'm like, okay, Mum, I get it. I had a tutorial about it. No, but thank you for informing me on, the new information.
So look, if you're still hanging with us, as many of you are, and you've enjoyed the crack tonight, would you give Lisa a round of applause in the comments there? Maureen says Lisa's been phenomenal, such amazing info. Lisa, we've seen so many of these comments. People are blown away by your institutional knowledge and your cult-like understanding of not just Irish whiskey but Jameson, and people are blown away by it. And the fact that you're roasting your mom live on air is a great thing too.
It's nothing new to her. But before we wrap up, and I feel like that's what we're coming to at the end of this,
But you can stay as long as you want. Like, I don't care.
You know I'm not going anywhere if you'll have me.
Hey!
But I do want to raise a point, and thank you very much for everyone who's been so kind in the comments. But I feel that Barry Chandler himself deserves a round of applause, because and this is what he does. He's extremely humble and very comedic in his approach, and will be self-deprecating sometimes to a fault, because he doesn't believe that he deserves the affection and the appreciation that he should get from the Irish whiskey and broader spectrum of following. And even the fact to shout out someone who's not well and who's followed you, and to be cognizant of the fact that there are people who follow you, and to give them a shout out because they're not well. I think that shows why you've been so successful over the last couple of years, to be able to inspire people, to connect people virtually and in person, and to just have such a lasting impact on people. And that goes down to your character as a person, and just your warmth to bring people together, to create a really a really formal but informal experience, if that makes sense, that people learn without feeling judged, and having that non-judgmental approach to whiskey, because I know that it can be very pretentious sometimes. Creating a platform where people can be unified in their exploration of whiskey, whatever knowledge that they have. And I think you should be really proud of what you've done over the last couple of years, because I'm really proud of seeing what you've done.
Oh, stop. You make me cry.
I'm excited to see what comes for you.
Give me a hug.
I know I miss you so much. I miss you and Melinda, and I
miss you too.
I'm really proud of what you've created and the following and the community that is behind you. And I think it's a testament to you as a person. And I think it shouldn't be gone unnoticed. So thank you
thank you.
Thank you for creating this platform. It's been great.
I appreciate that. Look, you're very kind. You're wrong, but you're very kind. And
no, it's every single person who's watching will agree with me that we wouldn't be here without you, and we just so appreciate you giving us a platform to connect and share our own stories and have a little sip along the way. Funny you named it stories, tips, but thank you for being our leader and unifying us.
Stop.
It's been great. No, I mean that.
Listen, you're brilliant.
An Irish thing to deflect from a compliment. Just take the compliment, and we
can't. Us Irish can't take the compliments. We can't.
If you're doing it to me, I'd be the same. But thank you for everything, and I've really enjoyed my experiences of growing and learning about Irish whiskey with you. So I'm going to talk to cheers to that.
You better. You better. Look, that's very kind of you. As I've said before, I only open the bottles. Everybody else does the hard work. But here we are, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sláinte, Lisa.
Sláinte.
So look, you've said it all. I don't know what to say after that. You caught me off guard. I'm normally used to deflecting from emotion and protecting myself. Yeah.
I'm dead away with that. So here we are.
It's the Irish way. Deflect. Yeah. If anyone has ever, many of you have been to Ireland, and if you've ever spent any amount of time there, Lisa will know this is true. But compliments are almost seen as insults in Ireland. It's if somebody says, "Oh, you've got a lovely sweater," people say, "Oh, it's disgusting. I hate it. I'm going to burn it."
Jesus, yeah. You may have only gotten it the day before and just waiting for someone to compliment you, but you can't take the compliments. You just can't. Like, that's the way it is in Ireland. You can't. Oh no.
And if you take
God forbid you're in someone's home and they offer you a cup of tea and you accept on the first ask, Jesus, who's your one? You know what I mean? Do you want a cup of tea? Notions. You cannot accept on the first ask. You need at least 2 or 3. So we will demonstrate. Barry, would you like a cup of tea?
No, I'm grand, thanks.
Are you sure now? I already boiled the kettle. Like, there's one on the
No,
stove.
I'm grand. No, I'm fine.
I got in a new bucket of Barry's Irish tea because I knew you were coming in. Go on.
Don't put yourself out. Don't put yourself out.
I already made a coffee. Yeah, here, take it. Here's a couple of biscuits. I'll see you in a couple of hours. And that's it.
I'd be grand.
That's it. You're almost getting a funnel and putting it into his mouth and pouring the tea down his throat. That's the only way you can accept a cup of tea or any other beverage or anything in Ireland. That's it.
I put a flask in the car for you so you can have it on the way home.
Exactly. I strapped it to your leg before you even noticed when you were sitting down, just so you could take it home with you.
A week ago, I put a flask in the post so that you'd have it.
I strapped it to the car window, but the undercarriage of it, so you wouldn't see it when you're reversing out the car of the carriage. So you have no excuse.
We're after doing all the work the Irish Tourist Board has ever done for Ireland in 5 minutes.
What's that song? Oh my God, who's it by? Enya. Where's the Discover Ireland and Enya music? We need that in the background.
Orinoco Flow, is it?
Yes. Oh, now you have me snorting on live camera.
If you see to the sea, to the land of Orinoco, follow me to the sea, to the land of Orinoco.
Exactly, to a T. Oh my God. My cheeks are hurting.
Oh, stop.
I'm smiling so much.
So the last two lock-ins, I've been foolish enough to take instruction from the audience, who in no way have my best interest at heart, who are only there for their own self-satisfaction and gratification. And each week for the last 2 weeks, I've been forced into a corner to sing an old song.
Oh, 3 guesses what we're going to sing then.
Well, I mean, yes, you know well the one song that would be the flag bearer at most of my tastings, to be fair. It might be something about some shaped instrument.
In an old prison cell.
You know, people are asking for a duet, but there's no real Waterford song, is there?
No, there's not. And I'm also not going to sing on live camera. Well, I might actually. If we could get the right song, I would. But I don't know the words of the L Triangle enough. I know I am Irish. I promise I'll show you my birth certificate. I just don't know the old Irish songs that well. You should have. I feel like it was a detriment to myself because I should have seen this coming, but also I feel like Barry should have sent me a list of songs to have prepared for this very exact moment. And I would have. I would have researched them and I would have had every note to a T.
But listen, this is the most unscripted, unproduced show that exists in the world. Think that I'd be organized enough to send you something.
We couldn't even give all the facts because we kind of forgot that there were facts to give.
I have 20 facts here that we didn't even get to. We were just having too much crack.
No.
But here's the problem now.
I would prefer that, but yes, tell me the problem.
Okay, so here's the challenge. As much as we'd like to sing a duet, the challenge is that this technology, we're not in the Royal Albert Hall in London. Where you might be surprised to learn that, audience, that we're not in the Royal Albert Hall.
I know it does look like from our backgrounds that we are, but we're not. I hate to quash any expectations or any, dreams and hopes, but we're not.
So that means that only one of us can sing at a time. So a duet would nullify the microphones. So no. Here's what we'll do.
Oh, I'm scared.
I have it.
Okay.
I have it.
Give me the
so I'll put up on the screen. Oh, look, here we go. Larkin Dunn has already taken care of it for us.
Oh, I haven't done the Rattling Bog in so long.
Joe.
I don't think I'm up to speed to be able to do the Rottenbach right now.
All right, so here's what we'll do instead.
I wish we could do like a live poll being like, okay, we would put up like a couple of requests, and whoever voted the most, we would come back and do another live stream dedicated just to song requests.
No. I don't know, audience, if you're noticing Lisa's attempts at evading the obligation to sing here tonight by coming back another night, as if that's going to happen. I think that Joe Moore nailed it here with Islands in the Stream.
A great car song. Every time that comes on, I'm like, islands in the stream, that is what you are. No one in between, reaching for the stars, sail away with me to another land, and we'll rely on each other. From one lover to another. That's about as much as we got.
Yes. All right, I'm going to need a top up if we're going to be singing.
I mean, what's next? Let's take suggestions, because I only see them as you submit them. So apologies to everyone else who's submitting probably very good recommendations, but I just cannot see them until Barry pops them up on the screen.
I don't know if you're noticing, like 5 minutes ago, Lisa was like, I don't sing. Now she's saying, let's get some suggestions going. What have we got here? Come on, bring it on.
What do the people want?
So what if we did this, right? What if we did a couple of bars of the Owl Triangle? I'll put them up on the screen. Yeah, you do though. I'll sing the verse and you'll sing the chorus.
I can try to make that happen. Okay.
All right. So let me put up the lyrics here. Actually,
will you do the chorus with me once, just so I know what it is?
Yeah, I will.
No, sorry. Will you do the chorus with me all the time, just so I don't mess up? Will you do everything and I'll just chime in when I feel like chiming in? Is that
can I also go home and Barry, you just keep doing what you're doing?
Can I just get off camera now and have some dinner, because I haven't eaten in about 7 hours? That would be great. Okay,
here's some suggestions. You're the one that I want, John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John.
What? Honey,
I got you, babe.
I got you, babe. I got you, babe. That's yeah, no, I can't remember the other lyrics.
George says this is the best Stories and Sips live yet. He feels like he's in Ireland.
Yes! We wanted to achieve tonight, George.
Look at this. Patrick Miller,
just like a cup
owner and distiller of the Talnua Distillery in Colorado. Just like a cup of tea.
Give me the microphone. Right. Take it over.
Here's what we're going to do. Okay, audience, whoever's listening, would you ever paste in the lyrics to the Owl Triangle to save me from moving away from my glass of whiskey here? Paste in the lyrics, and then we'll do this. Lisa and I will do it together. Yeah. Here's Joe Moore with the best ones of all, especially for you, Jason Donovan and Kylie Minogue. That's before your time, Lisa. That's before your time.
It was, but I feel like I have been exposed to
especially for you. I want to tell you you're the only one for me.
Yes.
This goes back to 1980s.
Keep going. I feel like I know it. I feel like I have
to. Because of you. And all I want is, yeah. I remember this one. I used to love Kylie Minogue in the late 1980s, before your time, Lisa.
I've seen photos. She was a babe. Weren't they together? Weren't Jason Donovan and Kylie Minogue
together? They were, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember that? They were like,
all right, here we go.
Were they in Neighbours or something together?
They were in Neighbours, yeah. All right, you've all come good. Audience, you've done me proud. You've shared some lyrics. All right, guys, here's what's up. Okay. So this chorus is, and that owl triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Okay, I can do that part. Okay.
But here's the
Right.
problem. Here's the challenge, right?
Yep.
If you and I sing together, people will hear nothing.
Okay, I'll do the chorus. I just need to know when to do the chorus.
Okay, so I'll do it one time now, and then you can repeat it when it gets to it.
I know. No, now that I saw the lyrics, I know and the old triangle went jingle jangle along the banks of the Royal Canal. Something like that.
That's it. That's it. All right.
Maybe you do it once so I get it on my ear, and then we can.
Okay. All right. So I'll sing the first verse and then the chorus, and then we'll come back and we'll chat.
Okay.
All right. La 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 la. I didn't do my practicing. Okay. A hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice were squealing in my prison cell.
No.
And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Right.
That's it. I'm sorry. I was so.
Your bit is right.
So captivated that I forgot what we were doing for a second. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll sing the first bit, and when it gets to "and that old triangle," you're going to sing that.
Okay.
Okay.
All
right.
Does this count as like my submission for Ireland's Got Talent? Can we use this?
This is the Eurovision. This is the Eurovision entry.
Just pause that for a second. Have you seen that new movie about the Eurovision?
I have.
It's shocking, isn't it? It is
terrible.
So bad. Like what? Why did Will Ferrell think that was a good, and also Rachel McAdams think that was a good career move? But I don't care about the money. That's not going to make. Oh my God, it was shocking. I watched it with an American guy, and he was like, "I don't get it. Like, is this an American like?" Ireland's Got Talent. I was like, no, it's European. He was like, okay, so it's like American Ireland. I was like, no. He's like, okay, so it's like The Voice. I was like, no. You just don't get it if you're not from Europe. And I was like, fun fact, Ireland has won the Eurovision the most amount of times. We've won 7 times. The last time was Linda McCarthy in 2006.
Lisa, you're filibustering. You're filibustering.
I really don't want to sing. I'm sorry. Let's continue.
Right. Here we go.
Okay.
I'm going to sing the first verse, and I'm going to stop and say, right, Lisa, you can sing the chorus. I'll put it up on the screen.
Can't wait.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay. A hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice were squealing in my prison cell. Lisa.
You didn't say it was me, so I was waiting for you. No, I don't need the lyrics. And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Woo!
Woo!
To begin the morning, the screw was bawling. Get up, you bowsy, and clean up your cell. Lisa.
And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Woo! And the screw was peeping as the lag lay sleeping, dreaming about his girl Sal.
And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Is that it?
Up in the female prison, there are 75 women, and amongst those women, I wish I did dwell.
And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
All along the banks of the Royal Canal, all along the banks of the Royal.
Jesus.
Canal.
I thought my video just got like locked in and like it was on some weird loop. I was like, this is never ending. This is what purgatory feels like. It was no, I got so into that my necklace fell off. Like it fell off forever.
It's dead. It's gone.
It's gone. It is gone. No longer wearing it. It's off my neck.
Oh, listen. Oh, sure, listen. Maureen's impressed in Canada. Joe Moore says, good Jesus.
I feel that. I feel the good Jesus.
Peter says, good night. He's going home.
I don't blame him. I wish I could see him. I'm already home, but here we are. Still making a show of myself. Oh my God. Can I just stop snorting on camera?
Yeah.
That would be great.
That was a bit of crack.
What else is going on? What else can we share about Ireland and whiskey and?
I don't know. We have another song, will we?
No, I think we're okay on the song front. Unless if that's what the people are, we'll give the people what they want. But I don't.
Well, the people will tell us what they want. We are puppets on strings.
Comments. What would you guys like to see? I can do a bit of juggling. I can probably do a handstand if I need to. I can do some yoga, whatever. Oh, summer loving, hand me a blast. That's up to you.
Go on. Keep going.
No, that's your part.
Summer loving happened so fast. I met a girl crazy for me.
Met a boy cute as can be.
Summer days
drifting
away.
Butter for the summer nights. Well.
Tell me more. Did you get very far?
Tell me more. Like, does he have a car? Okay, we're cutting that one. We're done.
Okay, that's gone. Lorcan's putting in all these very divisive songs here. We're not singing armored cars with their tanks and their guns. Yeah, all right. Well, I mean, jazz, we're getting very
political there, yeah.
Very political there now. There's no place for that in
you like that, let him fight me like the man. No, none of that.
No. I mean, Saw Doctors is probably the best bet. Like a bit of Saw Doctors, you know.
I don't know Saw Doctors. It's before my time. Give me an example of a Saw Doctors song.
I used to love her once, a long time ago. I used to love her once, a long time ago. It's gone. Oh, my loving is gone. Oh, it's gone. Oh, my loving is gone. I have fallen for another. She can make her own way home.
Keep going. I don't know it yet.
What else have we got? Shiz, what do we like?
I don't know.
What was the song you sang that night?
It's great.
We were down in, remember we were in the bottle shop in Columbus, and they were very thrilled to have us that night. And we were singing some songs. I think you were singing the national anthem at some point.
I was. I feel like I was, it was around Christmas time because I was heading back to Ireland the next day or something. And we were singing The Pogues and Kirsty McCall. What's the name of that song again? Fairy Tale New York. We were singing
Fairy Tale New York. That's right.
Yeah. We're about maybe 7 months out from it being the appropriate season, but great song.
That's right.
Nonetheless.
Never stopped us. But listen, I mean, We've said it all. We've sang a few songs. What more is there to do?
Make dinner. I need to get some sustenance in me.
Lisa McGrath,
Yes.
activation specialist for Pernod Ricard, ex-brand ambassador for Jameson, all-round legend, and a good old buddy of mine. I salute you and cheers to you. You've made a great night for us. We're going to get the ratings for this one. We might even beat out some of the network TV shows tonight.
Here's to open. I'm scared, but should I do a final toast?
You should. Go on.
Yeah, ooh.
A dirty one.
Do you want a dirty one?
Well, Jeff Adams requested. That's not my words, but
I have two dirty ones. I'm going to go with one of the lesser dirty ones because the other dirty one is too dirty.
Yeah.
But
okay.
This has been inspired by my old roommates when I was in Columbus. Every night we went out, I would end up on the top of a bar one way or another. And I would do this toast because of them, because they taught it to me. So to my Canadian sisters, Kelly and Amy, this one's for ye. To those who love us and to those who don't, to those who will fuck us and fuck those who won't. Cheers.
Jesus, Sláinte.
Ask for a dirty one.
Jeff, you got your wish. Love it. Brilliant. Listen, people have had the crack. Lorcan says, great crack, well done. Stephen says, great night altogether.
Great.
Joe Moore, a true asset to the industry. Lisa, fantastic night from Maureen. Sláinte from Johnny.
Sláinte.
Amen from Jeff. We did it. Lisa, you did it. You did it tonight.
You did it. It was a collaborative effort.
we lost our PG rating.
There was a disclosure beforehand that it would not be PG. So,
and I like how that was the mild one. So fair play to you.
I off camera, I'll tell you my other one. It's not for the
I'll filter it. That's fine.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, look, listen, I'll let you go away and cook your dinner. I can't thank you enough. We have to do this more. This is amazing. Thanks a million for hanging out. I've had the crack. I miss hanging out with you. I'm glad we could do it here virtually, and we'll do it in person again soon. But you've been great, and the people have loved it. So cheers, Lisa.
Cheers.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, Sláinte. Thanks a million. Lisa McGrath, unbelievable crack and fun we had tonight. Woo! 2.5 hours flies by very fast. Johnny says we got to hear the other one. Woo! That was so much fun. Isn't that what the lock-in's all about, is having the crack and hanging out with people that are a bit of fun? And this is, I think you've gathered by now, by no means a technical academic introduction to whiskey. In fact, if that's what you've come here for, you've absolutely found the wrong place altogether, because here we're locked into an Irish pub for the night and who knows who will turn up. But here's what will happen. We'll have a great old time. Richard says 6 stars out of 5. I appreciate that. It was a great night, Johnny. We had a great old time and we'll do it again soon next Friday. So listen, folks, thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, I would ask you one favor, and that is to share this stream. Press share, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Let your friends know what's happening. Why don't we get to 20,000 people on a Friday instead of 10,000 or 6,000? Let's get to 20,000. Let's make the biggest gathering of fans of Ireland, of the crack, of Irish whiskey in one place in the world every Friday night. I would love if we could make that happen. So look, press share, copy and paste the link into your profile, email your friends, whatever you've got to do. Let's bring more people to the table. Let's get more people enjoying the crack, enjoying their whiskeys, and just having somewhere that they can meet other like-minded people on a Friday night. I love this. I'm thrilled with it. I can't thank you all enough for joining in. Whew, it was a great one. I'm off to get some food of my own. Thank you so much for joining in. And I'll see you in our Facebook group, Irish Whiskey Fans of America, over the next few days. And back here next Friday. Sláinte from me and from Stories and Sips.